Now, that warned area, that does include a meet right now, so kind of western central Tangipahoa Parish, not there yet, but this is in the lead up to that initial line approaching our viewing area. We'll say computer models did almost a phenomenal job of timing out when these storms would arrive. Now, the area that we're watching at the moment, and for folks on the North Shore, kind of in the Tangipahoa Parish, right around where it is labeled Baywood here, this is the area that we're watching at the moment. This doesn't look like it would be a very strong tornado, possibly an EF01. Tornado classifications aren't determined until the damage is done, but these have been showing up kind of along this leading edge. So far tonight, they've been a little bit more removed in northwest or southwestern Mississippi, excuse me. We have seen a few across the Florida parishes, so we knew this was definitely going to be a possibility as we continue throughout this evening and through tonight. I was kind of hoping maybe we would at least get these storms started without the severe risk, but here they are. So this is going to be the first one of probably several of these warned areas that we have to keep an eye on through the night and into the early morning hours of Thursday. So this would put it in the place of Montpelier, and then as it continues up, could be around a meet or Independence as we get a little bit closer to, say, after 8:30, maybe toward 8:45. The warning is actually in effect until 9 p.m., but these storms have been moving at a very decent clip, so they are moving very quickly. Now notice, you don't see with the reflectivity, kind of a show of what we typically see with radar being the heavier rainfall. This is right along the leading edge, so you don't get those little hook echoes. This is going to be embedded, as we've said, within all of the heavy rainfall. You certainly are going to get some strong gusty winds with this storm, as well as that brief little spin up. That doesn't always necessarily mean it will or is developing a tornado, but certainly with the rotation within this thunderstorm. And one of the tools that we have available within the radar is the algorithm and actually read where there is some weak rotation. So it's kind of in that same area we were talking. Doesn't jump out at me with regard to it being a classic tornado signature or what we would typically look for within these. But as I've said, along that leading edge of storms, you're going to get these quick little spin ups. They can produce tornadoes, and so the radar indicating the rotation, and after a couple of passes of the radar beam within that cell, it does look like the rotation is held together, and so the Weather Service will issue a tornado warning. Again, we're at 8:19 now, so this is, let me go to the latest image here of it just to show you where the rotation is or being shown over the last 15 minutes to kind of give you an idea of where this has been progressing. So you can kind of see this one kind of creeping out of East Feliciana Parish and then into St. Helena Parish. As that continues, it could put it in the trajectory of Montpelier. If it does kind of continue to follow that trajectory, maybe it stays a little bit more south of Amite, but we'll see what happens within the next several minutes or so. So this is coming in along the leading edge, as I've said, of what is probably going to be a fairly active line, especially in the northern part of the line. Look at the complex of storms from Baton Rouge up through the state line towards southwestern Mississippi. A solid line of some very intense thunderstorms. Not always will there be rotation, but certainly you're going to get some very strong initial winds with these storms. Now, as I've also been saying, once that leading edge has passed you up, the risk of severe weather is immediately diminished. So the folks in Zachary, Louisiana, winding down. In fact, the severe threat in Baton Rouge is starting to wind down. So this is not going to be a prolonged event throughout the entirety of the overnight and early morning. You'll get that, yes, initial line of storms, and that'll be your greatest severe threat. But once it's done, you might still have areas of heavy rainfall. The severe threat is then done for you. So you can start signing the all clear indications once that leading edge is passed. Not quite to the viewing area just yet, but it is certainly getting awfully close. So around the Baywood area, looks like it may be just outside of that. So as it continues to inch into St. Helena Parish. This is going to move in the direction of the community of Montpelier and then could continue toward Independence. The velocity signature that we look at, this is a look at the winds. We talk about this a lot, where the winds are moving toward and away from the radar site, which is in Hammond now. Remember, a few years ago it was moved out of Slidell. So our radar is actually sampling these storms much better as they come in from the west, since we had moved that radar site, or since the National Weather Service moved the radar site from Slidell toward Hammond. We're getting a much better sampling of these storms as they come at us from the west. And you see these bright greens to almost blue color. That's where the winds are moving toward the radar site. The reds are moving away. So it's not a very closed or tightly bound, what we call a couplet. That's what we call the areas of wind moving toward and away from the radar, very close together. This isn't a really tight couplet, so this looks to be more or less kind of a broad circulation with regard to rotation within the thunderstorm. And a rotating thunderstorm is what we call a supercell thunderstorm. So it is going to be a strong thunderstorm. You are going to get intense rain. You are going to see a lot of strong wind even as that storm passes through. And as we've said all the time, strong winds can still do just as much damage as weak tornadoes. So straight line wind damage, tornado wind damage, really doesn't matter. Damage is damage. And that is certainly a possibility with that leading edge now approaching, again, not quite to our viewing area just yet, but approaching. Also looks like a new tornado warning that kind of overlaps, goodness, kind of overlaps just to the north of Amite. Storm that is just to the north of Greensburg. You're going to find within this entire line there will be individual cells or areas that cause a little bit of quick spin up, quick little bit of rotation, and that does prompt these warnings. So right now you actually have two in effect for Tangipahoa Parish. I'm going to move the map here because I've got my computer kind of right in the way, so I'm going to move it a little bit further so you can kind of see the area that we're talking about. So this would be as the storm, again, if you're in Tangi, you're wondering where is the storm. It is just off to your west. You might hear the thunder, see the lightning in the distance, and it is moving your way. Now, as far as this second tornado warning that has been issued, it is south of Kentwood, so kind of looking along the I-55 corridor. It's south of Kentwood and north of Amite, say just to the north of Amite. That's this first warned area. The second one is what we cut into programming with, and that's the one that is approaching Montpelier at the moment and maybe more towards south of Amite and into the Independence area shortly. So some of the communities, and we'll kind of zoom in on this second warning that was just issued. The town of Tangipahoa, Fluker, Arcola. So these are the areas that would be inundated or possibly inundated with the possible tornado shortly here from that second warning that was issued. Let's take a scan of the velocities, and you see those bright greens and blues. Those are the winds moving toward the radar site. Even still, look at the intensity and the coloration of the greens and blues, the winds moving toward our radar site. So these are all strong. Okay, this just changed over to a confirmed tornado. When the coloration like that changes to the purple, that is a confirmed tornado. So I'm going to read what the, I'm sorry here, I'm going to zoom out. Let's stay on that, and I'm going to switch over my computer here so I can read what the Weather Service is saying. They are calling this a considerable threat as the second one. So this is going to be around Roseland at around 8:30. So this is in about 5 minutes, and then Amite at 8:35. So they are considering this a confirmed tornado with a particular, what we call a PDS, a particularly dangerous situation. This is the one near Greensburg right now. It is in St. Helena Parish, but moving toward Tangipahoa Parish. You need to seek shelter immediately from Greensville to Roseland to Amite. You need to seek shelter immediately. This is a confirmed tornado on the ground. As we have said, a lot of times what radar does is it finds that rotation within the thunderstorm, finds that rotation that has kind of settled down a little closer to the surface. So best guess is that it is a tornado. Well, this one has been a confirmed tornado on the ground. So again, it will be near Roseland at 8:30 and near Amite at 8:35. So you've got about 5 to 10 minutes from Roseland to Amite to seek shelter. When we talk about seeking shelter during a tornado, we're in an area that does not have basements. So your best bet is to get into a centrally located room, a room where there are no windows, as many walls between you and the outside of the house as you possibly can get. That is where you need to be. Get as low to the ground as possible. Cover yourself with whatever you have, because in those areas from Roseland to Amite, the storm itself right now is over Greensburg, moving about southeast at 40 miles an hour. So it is moving very quickly, but this is in fact a confirmed tornado. Again, we have 2 areas that we're watching. This is our confirmed tornado. So Amite, Roseland, what it looks like is it may be kind of analyzing this part of the storm right here. The Weather Service folks analyzing this part of the storm and kind of coming down toward the southeast, because that would be then Roseland and Amite just to the south here, kind of just off of the map. So looks like Fluker, I would still err on the side of caution, get into that tornado safe space, but looks like to be kind of more in this corridor of where the storm is going to be going. So staying south of LA 440, continuing along, it'll eventually get to I-55 and continue down toward the Highway 51 intersection, and then it will continue on. So keep that in mind with regard to exactly where it looks like this storm is going. We've been in the Roseland area. We've been in Amite recently with the plant explosion in Roseland. These are kind of smaller communities, a lot of the homes all tightly together. You need to get into that tornado safe space now, because this is a confirmed tornado around Greensburg. And if I put this into motion, and I'm going to switch over to the rotation, and I'm going to put this into motion, you can see how bright the rotation indication is there. Putting this into motion, it kind of starts at the Greensburg area at about 8:20, and then not quite 10 minutes later, 8:25, it's kind of moving again in that general almost due southeast. So that would put it in toward Roseland and then Amite. So this is as I said, what the Weather Service has terminology for, a particularly dangerous situation, because this is a confirmed tornado. You can see that bright, just kind of really stands out. The bright blues and greens, these are strong winds coming back toward the radar site in Hammond, and then these reds are the ones that are moving away. So there is your rotation, and it is moving in a southeasterly direction. So if I'm in Fluker, while I didn't mention it from the text from the National Weather Service office, you are wanting to get in that tornado safe space as well, then kind of heading down Highway 55 and LA, or Highway 51, I-55, Highway 51, Fluker to Arcola, Amite, Roseland. These are the communities where you need to be in your tornado safe space immediately. These are going to be a very dangerous line of storms, as well as a confirmed tornado in that same line moving your direction. We can also analyze if there is any hail within this storm. Looks like that is not as much of an issue. Updrafts may be a little bit weaker with regard to development of hail, so it does look like this is more of a tornadic event. And I don't want to ignore the possible tornado and the tornado warning for now almost of the Montpelier area and moving toward Independence. So we've got the one confirmed tornado. Again, this is kind of life-saving advance notice that from Tangipahoa to Fluker to Roseland, Arcola, Amite, the storm is not even there yet. It is still fairly decent west of I-55, so you've got time to get into that tornado safe space. Turn up your television, you can hear me. That's why we always talk about downloading the WWL Plus app, because you will be able to be notified of these events, as well as keep up with this. If you were to have a power outage, you can keep up with this on your phone as this tornado, which again, as I am updating you here, is a confirmed tornado moving toward Fluker, eventually Roseland, kind of in that same little intersection right there, and then continuing on down toward Amite. So Fluker, Roseland, Amite, depending upon the exact path of this tornado, you are in the crosshairs and need to be in that tornado safe space immediately. So here we are at 8:30 now. The storm itself moving southeast at about 40 miles an hour. So I'm going to kind of keep it on this graphic because it really shows up exactly where. When I switch over to reflectivity, all you see is bright red along a line. That's the leading edge of all of these storms. And this is the pocket of rotation. This is particular what we are tracking. I can also look at if there is the possibility, and this is in a little more of a rural area, but we can see if there is any debris being shown in the radar site. And as we kind of go through here, nothing that is jumping out, so it doesn't look like any debris being lifted aloft. I know this kind of looks funky on air when we're analyzing. A debris signature would really stand out in this deep red. You would kind of see this coloration in a little pocket within the deep red. If any debris was being lifted aloft into the storm, the radar is able to pick up on that and differentiate debris compared to, say, just rain. It's able to figure out the difference between the two. And so I'm not seeing that. And that's not surprising, as this is in a bit more of a rural area. And just based on the signatures that I'm seeing here, it looks like this would probably be a smaller or weaker tornado. You still see that approaching Fluker now, so Fluker, it may just stay to your south, but you never know with some of these storms. It could almost all of a sudden move east instead of southeast. So from Fluker, Roseland, Arcola, Amite, these are the communities that need to be in that tornado safe space now, as this is a confirmed tornado. Widening out, again, what prompted the cutting in here of programming is the one that is over Montpelier. Let me go back in time, kind of analyze this storm a little bit, because you do see what looks to be kind of that signature there, south almost of Montpelier. Almost looks like right here. So now more into Livingston Parish. If that is the case, you do see the bright colors and the greens, blues right here, but this is also, again, along the leading edge of the line of thunderstorms, but then you see the reds right here. So it looks like that right there is a possible tornado signature, or at least I should say rotation within the thunderstorm, or rotation within the line of thunderstorms. And as I click onto my rotation indicator, yeah, it looks like that would be more south of Montpelier. So kind of in this whole warned area, it's really more on the southern end of it, and that would put it more in the direction of Independence, or maybe just to the south of Independence. So those are the areas that would need to seek shelter immediately. Okay, now interesting, what had been the confirmed tornado warning has switched back to just a tornado warning. I'm going to read here what the Weather Service is saying about the continuation. It remains in effect. Let's see, I'm going to just read exactly what they're saying. So now at 8:31, tornado warning remains in effect until 8:45 for east central St. Helena and northwestern Tangipahoa Parish. The thunderstorm now capable of producing a tornado was located near Roseland or near Greensburg, moving southeast about 35 miles an hour. The dangerous storm will be near Amite and Roseland in about 2 minutes. So here again, reflectivity, switching back over. This is the leading edge of those storms. Regardless of a tornado, these have very strong winds associated, and you're going to get some very intense winds in addition to some very intense rainfall. And if there is, in fact, tornadoes in this solid line of intense rain, you are not going to see it. You're not going to hear it. I know a lot of folks always assume that you'll kind of see these coming. You don't when they're embedded within this heavy rainfall, and we are now at 8:30 at night. You're not going to see this coming at all. Long I-55, it is just now along that corridor, just now starting to move deeper into our viewing area, which is kind of, as we look from west to east on the North Shore, starts in Tangipahoa Parish. Obviously, folks in St. Helena, Livingston Parish do watch us. Those are typically more under the coverage area of Baton Rouge. So this is still an ongoing tornado warning. We have 2 tornado warnings, both as these storms move toward Tangipahoa Parish. and one had been at a time when first issued a confirmed tornado down to still a tornado warning, but does look like, again, if there is anything that is showing signs of the rotation within this line of heavy rain, it's going to be staying probably just to the south of Fluker, but as I said, sometimes these storms will make a quick adjustment toward the east. It has been moving southeast, but that would put it toward Roseland, Arcola, and then toward Amite. But we also have for Amite, you kind of are almost under two separate tornado warnings. You got one coming out from the northwest of you, and then another one coming from the west of you. However, the one that is west of you in Amite, really more probably toward the Independence area, because when we switch over and look at the velocities, it's really more this area within the whole warned box. It's really more of this part of the storm that has the rotation showing up. So as we kind of switch our map view here, Tickfaw appears. So south of Independence around Tickfaw, you want to start and get ready to get into that tornado safe space. If you're around the Arcola area, you see it switch back over to a confirmed tornado warning. So this is still a very dangerous situation. You can kind of see the highlighted area has gotten a little bit smaller as the storm is now moving into your area. There's your rotation. So from Fluker, as I said, Fluker was not out of the woods at all. If this were to take a little bit more of an eastward jog, and it looks like that has happened, you might be now under the gun here in Fluker with this tornado right on your doorstep. Fluker, down to Roseland, Amite, get into that tornado safe space now. Again, that is a most centrally located room on the first floor of your home. Get as many walls between you and the outside of your house as you can, and preferably a center room with no windows. So you want to be as barricaded as you possibly can with what is showing up as a confirmed tornado now moving into Tangipahoa Parish. So the communities of Fluker to Roseland need to be in that tornado safe space now. Switching over to the rotation signature, that's been just jumping out at us as we've been tracking this storm. I'll also switch over to the debris signature. Still not showing anything that would indicate that necessarily, but certainly the possibility of maybe some debris kind of showing up a little bit there, just to the west, almost west-southwest of Fluker. So there may be a little bit of debris elevated aloft within this storm, within what is being classified as a confirmed tornado. So Fluker to Roseland, you need to be in that safe space, that shelter immediately. So zooming in just a little bit tighter, here is about where the tornado would be. I know this is kind of a broad area that I'm showing. The radar is only so good at analyzing something as small as a tornado, but it does look like it would be right in through here, so about to, if not already over, and we just got that update. So it has already crossed I-55. The reason why you get these jumps in radar, something you have to consider, the radar site in Hammond has to make a complete 360-degree turn and tilt up several times before we get a new image. So it is not immediate. There are a couple of minutes of lag time, but these come in every couple of minutes. And when it does, you sometimes see these dramatic jumps. So what looks to be having been just to the west of I-55 a second ago is now already crossed the interstate and is now over Fluker. So this is a confirmed tornado over Fluker, Roseland at the moment. If this holds together, we could be talking about it continuing toward Wilmer, Holton, not in the warned area yet, but I like to kind of err on the side of caution and start extending this out, following the trajectory of these storms and watching where they could continue. This particular storm is confirmed as a tornado and does look like, as I said, we kind of have to wait. Unfortunately, we're not instantaneous with the images that come in from our radar. These are as real time as we can possibly get, but we have to wait. See, there is a pass of the radar. The radar has to do that several times at various tilts before we can get a new image. And when we get that new image, we get the reflectivity, we get debris, we get velocities, we get rotation, we get hail. So it's analyzing a lot lot of data in each of those passes. After it's completed all of those passes, then we get a new image. So that's why you sometimes do see these dramatic jumps. So assume with a storm moving 35 to 40 miles an hour, this is already traveling right along LA 10, say, or just about paralleling LA 10 and moving away from Fluker. But you still got in Fluker some very intense winds. Again, the blues to greens, these are the winds moving toward and down toward the radar site in Hammond. The reds are moving away from the radar site in Hammond. So the radar just down to the south. So this is a very well analyzed storm with regard to getting the details. This is as close to the radar site as you really want to get with getting that clear image of what is a confirmed tornado. I keep switching back here because I've got a chat group going with the folks at the National Weather Service office to see if they kind of update any of the information with the ongoing two tornado warnings. Remember, we also have one that is just to the south, and I don't want to ignore that. So let me switch back over, and we'll continue to watch this one as it moves away from Fluke. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You know, sometimes you get some small roads that are almost too difficult for me to read, but it does look like if you're in the Wilmer area, now while not in a warning yet, it is certainly very close, and I would get ready to get in that tornado safe space. Honestly, if I'm in Wilmer or in Holton, I'm getting into that tornado safe space because it could be moving in your direction. Now I want to zoom, and now this is a confirmed tornado as well, the one that we had been watching. And notice how much smaller the warned area is. Does not include a meet any longer. It's moving more toward Tickfaw. Looks like it'll stay to the south of Independence, but from Tickfaw almost to Natalbany, you've got the rotation right in through here. So yet another now confirmed tornado on the ground in Livingston Parish, moving into Tangipahoa, southwest Tangipahoa Parish. Now for the folks in Hammond, Ponchatoula, this is to your north right now. So trying to narrow it down by community as much as possible. We don't want everyone sounding the alarm in their homes. We try and limit that as much as we can. We do want to give everyone the warning when it's a little bit more broad, but if we can kind of narrow that down for you, we try and do that as best we can. So right now it's going to be around the Tickfaw, Independence area, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit tighter because sometimes a few even small communities. Fourth Ward School in Livingston, right along LA 43. Looks like that may be where the rotation is, and then it would continue along kind of just to the north, say, if it almost parallels LA 442, moving toward Tickfaw. So Independence, just be on guard at the moment, stand by. It does look like it should stay to your south, but moving toward Tickfaw. But as I've said, sometimes these storms are moving in one direction and all of a sudden they kick off into another direction and all of a sudden completely change their trajectory. So Tickfaw, you are the folks that need to be in that tornado safe space immediately. I'm going to zoom back up a little farther north to show the storm that is north of Amy, still showing that sign of rotation around Roseland. Looks like as it continues to move away from Fluker, I would certainly be on guard and ready to get in that tornado safe space. And I apologize, I'm kind of covering up part of the screen here. I'm going to move out just enough. Wilmer and Holton, if this does continue in that trajectory, you could easily be within the path of the tornado. We'll see if the Weather Service decides to either extend or issue a new warning for this particular cell. And again, what you're looking at here are the storm velocities. These are the winds. This is actually the Doppler part of Doppler radar, and what we're looking at is the winds in the thunderstorms, and this is a solid line of thunderstorms, and what we can see here is where the winds are moving toward the radar site, which is down in Hammond, or moving away. The blues, the greens, they're moving toward. The reds are moving away, and when they are close together like that, that indicates broad rotation. But then we can kind of take it a step further and find that rotation in the storm. And this has really just been jumping out at us with regard to the rotation signature of that storm. This is a confirmed tornado. That looks to have been pretty well established, and it looks like, goodness gracious, it looks like another confirmed tornado moving in from northeastern Tangipahoa Parish moving into northwestern Washington Parish. Where it is right now, doesn't look like too many communities popping up, a number of streets, so you might have some small kind of sporadic housing in that area, but moving in the direction of northwestern Washington Parish, Porter's Curve, Sunny Hill, those areas of Washington Parish. Again, I'm going to switch over the velocity here. Storm velocity to try and find. It doesn't show up quite as well with the velocities there, but switch over to reflectivity here. The storm that we're watching is actually kind of moving in that direction. So not quite that storm, that's why. The storm is not quite into the warned area just yet, but it is certainly moving. All right, now we just got a new image there. You see how fast and how dramatic sometimes these storms update, because again, we rely on a few passes of the radar. We're going to get as detailed of information on these storms as we possibly can, but that does unfortunately have the downside of you do have to wait a couple of minutes. And with these storms moving at about 40 miles an hour, just those few minutes can mean a dramatic shift in exactly where the storm is. So this is in real time as we can possibly get with the high-powered radar, the highest powered radar in the area from the National Weather Service in Hammond, but it does have its downside of you do need to wait a couple of minutes, which is why these warnings typically go out even before the storm has reached the area that is being highlighted, because it is almost more certain with the development of a tornado in these storms that the Weather Service can issue these even before the storm has reached that area. We just try and give folks as much lead time as we possibly can. So the storm itself is moving toward Porter's Curve, Sunny Hill in northwestern Washington Parish, kind of along LA 38 east of Kentwood. So if you're following along LA 38, you're coming out of Kentwood moving toward Washington Parish. This is where the rotation is, and it is moving toward Porter's Curve, Sunny Hill, and then would continue toward, I'm going to widen out here a bit, Clifton, Richardson, and then just outside of the warned polygon would be the city of Franklinton. Scanning a little bit more to the south, this is the warned area that we had talked about a moment ago, and you're also noticing maybe at times kind of large warning boxes. It's because these storms are moving so quickly. By the time the Weather Service goes and issues another one, in order to include all the communities in that warned area, it becomes rather large because these storms are moving so quickly. Holton, you're right in the center of where this storm may be moving. And again, if it takes more of a southeasterly direction, Hoosier could be in on it, and then possibly not there yet, but crossing into St. Tammany Parish and then into Folsom. You're still a little bit farther out. You have some time to watch this one. The other confirmed tornado that we have is the one that is approaching Tickfaw. Does look like, I'm going to switch over to the velocities to look at the winds. It does look like this is going to stay to the south of Independence, but does appear like it is moving in the direction, and again, if it's just outside of this box, that is still very possible, but kind of moving in the direction of Tickfaw and then down toward Natalbany as that storm progresses. I'm going to widen out here just because as I've been so focused in on those particular storms, sometimes you kind of forget the entirety of the line. This has really been where the most intense of the storms have been, even going back to following this line when it was well into, say, western and central Louisiana. This was a lot of the activity that we were tracking around the Alexandria area. Not exactly the same exact storms, but kind of that same pocket of storms that were moving through central Louisiana. We started to see a lot of that activity kind of shift a little bit more toward southwestern Mississippi, but this is kind of almost all in conjunction with that entire complex of storms that we may be looking at kind of the most active parts, thank you, most active parts of the storm in and around the North Shore at the moment. Not to say that the storms that will continue on the South Shore a little bit later on won't be as intense, but this is appearing to be where most of the intense storms have been so far going back several hours, and you kind of see along the southern end of the line, these storms are not nearly as intense as they are on the North Shore. It looks like we have several more, see, looking up toward kind of north of this line, Columbia, Mississippi, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, so there are several more tornado warnings. So, all right, let's see, updating our warnings, and you can kind of see a kind of almost solid line of where the rotation is within these storms, moving out of central Tangipahoa Parish, kind of continuing toward now western Washington Parish, and then eventually passing into northwestern St. Tammany Parish, are in the Folsom area. So at the moment, this is where we're looking at pretty significant signatures of the rotation, and likely tightly wound, or tightly wound, where you get the coloring of the moving toward the radar and moving away from the radar, very, very close together. That we're getting several of those pockets indicating a few that were just radar-based indications of a tornado, as well as some confirmed tornadoes. One such is now moving into the communities of Potter's Curve and Sunny Hill that are popping up on our radar here in northwestern Washington Parish, and then these would continue on toward Bickham, Clifton, and in north central Washington Parish, and then could continue along a path toward Franklinton. Going a little bit farther down to the south, we have the storm that has already moved out of Roseland, Fluker, so Amite. So these are areas where we were telling you to get into that tornado safe space. Just give it another couple of minutes, and you can, you know, go back out, let this leading edge kind of clear you pretty quickly. And you see, as we get new images here, the radar, the data kind of jumps here. So it does look like that rotation is just about over Holton at this time. So that is where we're getting signatures of that rotation. The greens to blues are moving back toward, and then the reds are moving away. So right here, moving over Holton, we have a possible tornado. So Wilmer looks like you probably are in the clear. Just give it a little bit more time. Sometimes, again, these tornadoes can make a quick adjustment to their motion, different from the entire line of storms. So just give this a little bit more time. You're still getting some very strong winds from Amite, Roseland, Fluker. You're out of the warned area for the most part now, but again, just give it a little bit more time. Let these storms pass through before getting out, or before going out to see if there is any damage. And you know, when I switch over to the reflectivity, you're still in some very intense rainfall right now. This whole line is under a severe thunderstorm warning. Looks like our south of Independence, Tickfaw, and Talbany tornado warning has been allowed to expire. So that is some great news there. So we still have our ongoing 2 tornado warnings. And I know sometimes we're so zoomed in, you kind of lose sight of exactly where we are. So let me just zoom out a little bit to show you, you know, Hammond, here's our radar site. The 2 warnings that we're watching: a confirmed tornado well east of Kentwood, but moving now into northwestern Washington Parish, as well as a tornado warning that is outside of Amite, moving through now almost more north central Tangipahoa Parish, and moving toward Holton, Hooser. Looks like it's just probably to the south, looking back at the velocities, just to the south of Wilmer, but you're getting some very intense winds in Wilmer right now. So I would just stay into that tornado safe space for a bit longer, let this storm pass through. And then Holton, you want to be in that tornado safe space right now. As we've been watching, this is kind of not little pockets of rotation, but almost a solid line of rotation with that leading edge of the initial severe thunderstorm line that is pushing across the North Shore. With regard to our computer models with the timing of these storms, it has been almost spot on. We were expecting that these would be pushing into Tangi roughly at around 8. That's exactly when we started to see them coming out of St. Helena, Livingston, moving toward Tangi. And then we expected that this line was going to move through very quickly. And as I've also said, and we're going to continue watching, and notice how the tornado warning that is moving toward Franklinton does not include Franklinton, but toward Franklinton has gotten a little bit smaller. So that indicates where either the Western Weather Service is getting a much better idea of where that potential tornado is, so they're able to kind of isolate the warned area a little bit more. This is along LA 440 moving toward Richardson, so it looks like we were talking about Stony Point. Looks like it's probably not there, but moving toward Richardson. And then if it were to hold together, kind of just by my computer here in Franklinton, in a short time. I'm going to widen out, and so while I kind of show you these warned areas, I'm going to switch back over and go to the folks with the National Weather Service and see if I can get any new information from their warnings and their discussions that they have been sending out. They did cancel the tornado warning that was for north central Tangipahoa Parish. That looks like the storm that prompted that. This is one that, again, as these continue moving, certain areas are being allowed to be canceled, even if the warning itself continues on. Let's see, we're getting some reports. I'm going to keep it on that screen. It looks like from Fire and Rescue in northeastern Livingston, possible tornado with power lines reported down on LA 43 in northeastern Livingston. And what the fire department and rescue are reporting in Livingston, right around just to the southeast of Montpelier, that there was a possible tornado there with power lines reported down on LA Highway 43. So we're starting to get a few reports, one, of damage from these storms. Again, what may or may not be a tornado, what may or may not be just strong straight line winds, doesn't really matter. Damage is damage initially. What the Weather Service will probably do tomorrow and in the coming days, with hopefully limited storm reports, they will start going out and assessing the damage and start looking at data to see if these were in fact tornadoes. They are continuing the tornado warning for central Tangipahoa Parish. This is moving again, and kind of within the tornado warnings, also discussing the fact that these are possibly producing tornadoes or extensive straight line winds. Both can do equal amounts of damage. This is a storm that is near Wilmer, so the one we've been talking about a little bit farther down. We've got two active right now. And about 11 miles southwest of Franklinton. It is moving east at 40 miles an hour. So moving at about 40 miles an hour. Thankfully, as I've said, now there are little small houses, communities all across the North Shore. One thing that may be of a silver lining is that the tornadic thunderstorm will remain over mainly rural areas of east central Tangipahoa Parish. So not too many communities being impacted by this potential tornado right now. But again, if it does hold together, we'll see. It could move in the direction of Folsom. It may not. Hopefully it weakens, but this line of thunderstorms have been very intense. So again, even if it is not necessarily a tornado, it is certainly possible that it is very strong straight line winds. And a new tornado warning has just been issued south of the one we were just talking about. So this is now just to the east of Loranger and moving almost due southeast. So we would keep it north of Lorain. But again, folks in St. Tammany Parish, we're now getting a little bit closer to western St. Tammany Parish, getting in on some of these stronger storms. You do kind of get that lead time, the heads up. We've been tracking these from Baton Rouge to the Felicianas, Baton Rouge Parish, St. Helena, Livingston, and now into our viewing area, Tangipahoa. This is kind of giving you the lead time for Washington and St. Tammany of what is to come, because these have been, certainly, again, regardless of a tornado, we do have confirmed very strong straight line winds within these storms. So this new tornado warning, I'm going to zoom in here. We'll switch over to reflectivity just to give you a rough idea. You've already got some pockets of some heavier thunderstorms, but this is one that is moving out of Loranger, and then not too many communities in its path, as the radar kind of updates here. Not too many communities in its path. It looks like right here, so almost just outside of the warned area, maybe north of Loranger is where we have some broad circulation, and that is going to be moving into this warned area shortly here. and then could continue toward Unitas. And then if it does hold together, we may be looking at parts of St. Tammany toward Goodby, St. Benedict, kind of the Covington area, northwest Covington area, shortly thereafter. So here we are at almost 9 o'clock, and as far as the activity goes, it has been a fairly well-promised active line of storms that have started on the North Shore. We're starting to see, again, as this leading edge pushes through, you then can breathe that sigh of relief. Now, you still have some heavy rainfall, Amite, Independence, up toward Kentwood, but the leading edge, it's right here where you're going to have your greatest threat of severe weather. So once you're past that leading edge, while the rain will continue, you are now able to kind of relax a bit because the severe risk is just about gone. Now, there can be embedded within here some, but typically speaking, it's all going to be right along this leading edge if you're going to see any additional tornadic storms. So that is where we're going to be watching for additional either straight line winds or tornadoes. So, all right, now we just had a new one issued. Boy, these are just popping left and right, and this does include Hammond now. This is going to be for Hammond, and I'm going to get the text of it momentarily. Let's see. Southeastern Tangipahoa Parish. So this is a thunderstorm capable of producing both tornadoes and straight line winds and moving at about 30 miles an hour at Hammond. So in Hammond, you need to be in that tornado safe space immediately. Moving away from the Talbany, Hammond, again, right near the radar site here, Hammond, you need to be in that tornado safe space, the most centrally located part of your house. Get as many walls between you and outside as you can. First floor, no windows. Cover yourself up with whatever you can. Just wait this out. These are fast-moving storms. It is going to be near Robert in about 4 minutes. So it is over St. Tammany it is over Hammond right now, and will be toward Robert very, very shortly. So this is the area that we're highlighting right now. Let me switch back over to radar, switch over to velocities, and what we're looking for is kind of those colorations. Sometimes they stand right out. A lot of times when you've got data that is right near the radar site, unfortunately, it's not as clear. Keep in mind, this is a beam going straight out. If something is directly over the radar site, the radar doesn't look straight up over itself. So there is sometimes missing data right near the radar site. So around Hammond, and then Coburn, and Weather Service is saying it has been moving in a direction that could take it toward Robert. So while the box itself moves down toward the southeast, the storm itself, the cell capable of producing a tornado, may be moving a little bit more, say, east-southeast toward Robert. So staying north of I-12 right now, possibly kind of right along 190. So 190 corridor from Hammond to Robert, be in that tornado safe space right now. It is moving in your direction. We can switch over to the rotation, not jumping out, but there is definitely a pocket of rotation right here. East Park Avenue, here's Highway 51. Again, there's or LA 55, excuse me, and then, or not LA, I-55 and I-12 right there. So this is where the rotation is showing up. There's Coburn, where Hammond is labeled there, and it is moving in the direction of Robert. So again, this corridor here of basically 190, north and south of 190, right around that area. You want to be in that tornado safe space right now, because this is a tornado that is possibly directly over you. And as I've said, these are not storms that you can watch and wait for. It's embedded within some very intense rainfall, some very strong winds. Going up a little bit more, we now have a confirmed tornado just outside of Lauranja. Let me switch over to the velocities to see if we can find that signature. Does look like it is just to the east now, southeast, say, of Lauranja. Could kind of put it in a path south of Unitas, and then moving eventually towards St. Tammany Parish. One that is almost directly on top of that one does look like it is already beyond Holton, but again, if this storm holds together, as there's no evidence that says it shouldn't, could continue, and we may see a new warned area in Folsom here shortly. Another large warned area that does now include Franklinton. This is for a storm that is almost over Franklinton, kind of where we have Richardson here labeled. There's LA 25 in yellow. So then you have Franklinton. This is a new warning that, or maybe a continuation or an extension of a warning from a little bit ago that includes from Franklinton and would continue in a path possibly toward from Lees Creek, Bogalusa, Varnado. So these are storms that are moving very quickly, sometimes 30 to 40 miles an hour or so. They do move at a fairly decent clip. Intense rainfall, strong straight line winds. We now have the storm around Hammond, or excuse me, around Laranger, as I've mentioned, as a confirmed tornado. The one for Hammond, I'm kind of getting the number of them getting away from me here. The one in Hammond now looking like it's, switch over to reflect, or the rotation here. Looks like maybe that rotation area is beyond what is labeled Hammond. Now you've got the larger area of some of the suburbs of Hammond kind of moving away there, but you got little pockets of rotation showing up on radar. This may be about what we're talking about. So there is I-12 possibly passing right over I-12 right now, and possibly continuing along a path that would take it. This may stay south based on the trend of this rotation marker here. Go back to the last 15 minutes and kind of watch that one go from Hammond, almost moving down to the southeast. So unless it were to make a more dramatic change in direction, may stay down to the south of Robert, but switching back over to the reflectivity, this is still, you're going to get some of the heaviest of the rainfall here shortly as that system moves in. And again, it's difficult to see the data right around the radar site because right near the radar site there is a little bit of kind of a data lapse where it's not able to see anything right at the radar site. It's just unfortunate part of radars here. But we're going to continue to track these now. 4 active tornado warnings in and across Washington Parish that may hold together, move through Franklinton to Bogalusa. If that holds together, then into Pearl River County, as well as the storms basically along all of central, east central to southeastern Tangipahoa Parish, that if holding together, part of this may clip some of southwestern Washington Parish, but I think more than anything, it will then continue on into western St. Tammany Parish. So Folsom, Covington, down toward Beatico, Madisonville, this is your heads up that it is headed in your direction, and be prepared. Know exactly where you would go and be prepared to get in that tornado safe space as soon as we kind of trigger that tornado warning. As soon as that warning is triggered, you need to be in that tornado safe space immediately. The active storms that we have right now, again, around the Hammond area, moving east or east-southeast, southeast, eventually toward Lee's Landing. Again, as we had looked back at the rotation, it does look like, for the most part, this should stay south of Robert. You did see kind of an intensify there. It should stay to the south, possibly directly over I-12 right now. We'll continue to move in a direction that would probably take it over LA 22. So again, this, if these have been holding together, which there are no signs of them weakening at all, would then continue beyond Tangipahoa Parish and then move into St. Tammany Parish. So this is kind of the heads up now as this starts moving away from Hammond to then notify the folks in St. Tammany that this is headed in your direction. Let's zoom in a little bit tighter. Blythewood Drive, you have Wood Avenue, Greenleaf Circle around the Hammond area, eastern Hammond area, along I-12 or just to the south of I-12. North of I-12, you've got Lions Lake Road, Sisters Road, Quiet Lake Drive. These are some of the streets that are showing up that may be directly over what directly under the indications of rotation and possibly a tornado moving in your direction. The one that we've been tracking that was more to the north of that, moving away from Loranger, few streets here that are highlighted, Wilson Road, Ayer Road, and then in Unitas, just to the north, looks like maybe, gosh, some of these are so small it's hard for me to read. Whitlock Road, just to give you a rough idea of some of the streets that these storms are passing over right now with the potential rotation, and then directly over the town of Franklinton, eventually passing more over rural areas of central eastern Washington Parish, kind of continuing, may take it over or near Sheridan, and then eventually toward Bogalusa before crossing into Pearl River County. Now, it definitely looks like that rotation showing up pretty clear on our velocities here right over the town of Franklinton. So again, even if this is not necessarily a tornado, you've got the rotation in a thunderstorm, and that means it is a supercell thunderstorm. That means that it is a intense thunderstorm with some strong straight line winds. So the winds are going to be the biggest issue within the entire line of storms rolling through right now, and then also the potential of some quick spin-ups that you do get a sometimes brief tornado that moves through very quickly. I'm going to switch back over and I'm going to leave it up here for a moment just so I can kind of regroup with the Weather Service chat that's going on right now. Let's see, the last one that they're just Western Washington Parish warning has been canceled. We also have the continuation of the tornado warning that'll be in effect until 9:30 for southeastern Tangi. That's the one that we have said has been moving away from Hammond and probably staying to the south of Robert. But as the Weather Service is saying, while not in the warned area, it looks like just yet, this would be putting it in the path of Folsom and Covington here shortly as the storm continues moving roughly southeast at 30 miles an hour. So that storm, while again St. Tammany is not yet being highlighted in the warning, Weather Service in the discussion for the continuation of this warning in Tangipahoa Parish are already mentioning the communities that this will likely continue moving into. We've got the one that's up near Folsom, and then we've got the one that is a little bit farther south toward Covington, Beatico, Madisonville. If it does move that far south and a little bit closer to the lakefront, then we may be talking about the Madisonville area here shortly. So those are the particular cells that we're keeping track of at the moment, and we're going to continue to watch those as this entire line progresses. It almost becomes, to try and be a little bit more light with it, a little bit more comical with this leading edge and just countless tornado warnings that are issued along this. Hopefully, again, basically everyone should be heeding that warning that if told, get into that tornado safe space immediately, because you've got a solid line that is moving through. Much now of northern, western, central Tangipahoa Parish, you're kind of in the clear. You've got some heavy, moderate rain at the moment, but the intensity of that leading edge is now already past you. So you're now able to kind of relax a bit for the rest of the night. And while you do still get some lightning strikes within and embedded within the heavier rainfall, the risk of the tornadic storms is along that leading edge, so you can start breathing that sigh of relief. So going back through our active tornado warnings around Franklinton, I'm going to switch over to the velocities to see if we can kind of spot where that little circulation may be. It looks like right about here, so still kind of over the town of Franklinton. We'll continue moving in direction along LA 10, and then eventually it'll be in a place where it's far more rural before reaching Bogalusa. So at the moment, still a dangerous situation for the folks in Franklinton moving toward Bogalusa. Holton, looks like you're kind of out of it now. This is the storm that may be moving in the direction of, switch over, moving the direction of Folsom. You're getting some of that rotation showing up in Folsom right now. So when we switch back over to the reflectivity, Folsom, you're already getting in on the strong winds, the heavy rainfall. There's a possibility if that rotation that was seen in part of central eastern Tangipahoa Parish continues along, it may be clipping areas around Folsom. So again, Folsom, that would be the area that get ready if necessary to get into that tornado safe space. We've got that other smaller area that really no communities. Unitas just to the north of it. Not too many other communities being highlighted there. We've been going through some of the streets that are still in this warned area right on the parish line, say north of Goodby. Between Folsom and Goodby, you kind of have this second much smaller tornado warning that is moving, or the storm itself I should say, is moving into St. Tammany Parish. And then as far as the one that moved outside of Hammond goes, we'll switch back over to the velocities here to see if we can kind of pinpoint exactly where it is. It's going to be along the leading edge. So you see those the reds, that's all the wind moving away from the radar site. The greens are the ones moving back toward it. What I don't see, I see clearly the leading edge of these storms just based on the wind. What I don't really see any longer is any real semblance of the rotation. Now, just as I say that, the Weather Service issues a new, much larger tornado warning, basically including all or much of St. Tammany Parish, say, with the exception of Sun and down towards Slidell. Basically, those are the only two areas in St. Tammany Parish now not in this new tornado warning. This includes Folsom to Covington, maybe not Madisonville, but if you're near the warned area, you err on the side of caution. So say Madisonville, Mandeville, down toward Lacombe, Tallahassee, you are all under this new warning as this leading edge of storms approaches. Let me go and read what the text is from the National Weather Service on this new one so we can kind of update you exactly what their thinking is. This new tornado warning for, they're saying northwestern St. Tammany, is really all of St. Tammany Parish. Until 10 o'clock, they are still tracking the severe thunderstorms capable of producing both tornadoes and extensive straight line winds located along this line from Folsom to Covington, about 6 miles now east of Robert, moving to the southeast at 35 miles an hour. So what they're really saying, reading into this a little bit more, is that while there is no necessarily a single rotation couplet that the Weather Service is tracking, that because this line has had a history of these quick little spin-ups, and that there is still, I'm going to switch over to the rotation here, that there are still some signs of rotation almost entirely along that line. There isn't necessarily one particular area that is indeed a tornado, or even being seen as a tornado on the radar. I don't want to say confirmed, because that is different terminology, that is being seen as a tornado. I think that sounds to me the reason why they are issuing this very large warned area for St. Tammany Parish. So I'm going to switch over to the reflectivity just to show you what we're looking at now. These storms that are currently over Covington toward Madisonville, Mandeville, Beatico, that's not really the leading edge. The leading edge is what is over Franklinton right now, toward Lorain, toward the parish line, and then a little bit more down to the south near Lee's Landing. So this is the line that they are saying has the potential of either excessive straight line winds or the possibility of some quick rotation and thus producing a tornado. So again, kind of reading into their text for it, maybe a little bit, I guess you could kind of say they were on the line of either issuing this as a severe thunderstorm warning with regard to the strong winds or a tornado warning. Usually the tornado threat would supersede that of a severe thunderstorm warning, and so with that potential, Weather Service is issuing for almost most of St. Tammany Parish right now a tornado warning. So nothing confirmed. You broadly see areas where, again, the winds here are moving toward the radar site. They're moving away from the radar site south of Hammond. These greens are moving back toward the radar site. So this is kind of the leading edge of those storms that are now moving into St. Tammany Parish, western St. Tammany Parish. And so I don't necessarily foresee any real indications of rotation per se. There does look to be a little kind of broad highlighted area that shows up on a couple of the velocities here around the Goodby area. Not necessarily a tornado, but you know, this could be kind of a broad rotating thunderstorm here. So if I'm in Goodby, maybe getting into that tornado safe space right now. I mean, you're certainly in a tornado warning, so maybe go ahead and get into that tornado safe space in the Goodby area. As that continues along, that may be one that continues down toward Covington, and then folks in Covington, if this little kind of broad, lack of a better term, we'll call it a couplet, if that broad little couplet holds together for a little while longer, we may be looking at that continuing toward Goodby. Give me 1 second as I take a little sip of water here. All right, as we continue to track these storms. Again, just to recap what we are tracking right now, we earlier did have several confirmed tornadoes. We're waiting to get any details on those from law enforcement, the National Weather Service office, other government officials there. What we're broadly tracking right now are not necessarily tornadoes. There is another one that's kind of popping up, Pine Cliff. So you see this little, what looks to be almost a little couplet here, not quite, but certainly an area that I would be watching very closely. So if you're kind of, you know, if you're familiar with the areas south of Franklin and Pine Cliff along LA 1072, I would be in that tornado safe space right now. Bogalusa, you still got a little bit of time before these storms get to you, but definitely some broad rotation within that right now. And so again, even if it isn't a tornado, certainly some very strong winds, because this would be a supercell thunderstorm, and something that'll be watched very closely as it moves away from Pine Cliff. What I was starting to say was what we've been watching for the issuance of this tornado warning in St. Tammany Parish is not necessarily any one particular cell that is standing out as rotating, but more or less from what the Weather Service said in their discussion, other than the little area I'm still keeping an eye on around Goodby, you see it kind of broadened out here. So some strong winds about to approach Covington right now, already moving through Goodby, almost to Covington right now. What we're watching is, with this line, is that you've got the initial boundary and very strong straight line winds moving on through. Within those strong straight line winds and that leading edge, you can quickly get a little bit of brief rotation within some of these supercell thunderstorms, and sometimes that brief rotation can quickly develop a tornado. So I think what the Weather Service is thinking is that we're going to issue a tornado warning for these areas, with the caveat that it could be a tornado, it could be excessively strong straight line winds. As we said, damage is damage no matter what caused it, but within these thunderstorms and this leading edge, doesn't really matter if it's strong straight line winds or if it is a tornado. And actually you see kind of broadly this yellow is all a severe thunderstorm warning that is issued, that kind of includes all of these smaller tornado warnings within the leading edge of all of these storms as they continue through St. Tammany, or through the North Shore, Washington, almost out of Tangipahoa Parish, almost there. You're getting close to being kind of in the clear here. And while we continue to track those storms on the North Shore, just kind of panning a little bit more down to the south and west along this line, this is what will eventually move across the South Shore here a little bit later on tonight. These storms aren't nearly as intense as the storms are that came from, say, central Louisiana, across the Florida parishes, Baton Rouge, and are now spreading toward southern Mississippi. So this leading edge is where some of our more intense storms have been. Switch over to the velocities to see what we see around the Hammond area. I'm going to switch over to the rotation here. Not really anything jumping out over land. It looks like this south of Lee's Landing. You know, if this does hold together, could make it into the western part of the lake and become a waterspout. Pine Warbler Drive west. So now we're kind of crossing toward the Beatico area. A little bit of rotation showing up there. So I'm very familiar with a lot of these neighborhoods, family that live in Madisonville, just off of LA 22. You guys pay attention to this, the do-fors. Pay attention to this because this is a storm that could be moving your direction with some signs of rotation. So get into that tornado safe space as soon as you can because it could be moving in your direction. Again, this is kind of a broad area that we've been talking about on the North Shore just because of the complexity of this line that is moving through. You do have this area of thunderstorms ahead of the leading edge. It's going to be really the leading edge where you've got any potential for tornadoes. These storms, however, will be associated with some intense rain. You might get some gusty winds, but the tornadic threat are the ones that are just now approaching Covington, just now approaching Beatico, crossing the parish line into St. Tammany Parish. So as I've said, almost entirely now out of central and northern Tangipahoa Hope Parish. You folks kind of slowly, we can start giving you the all clear. We'll wait a bit before we do that just yet, but we're getting awfully close in those areas for Tangipahoa Hope Parish as you, again, will now need to assess if there was any damage where we had several radar confirmed tornadoes in those areas from early. Those are the storms that we were tracking when we kind of cut into programming here at just about 8 o'clock, about an hour and a half ago, of confirmed tornadoes that were coming out of St. Helena and Livingston Parish, pushing into Tangipahoa Parish. I got to say, our computer models did a phenomenal job with the timing of these storms. We knew the storm line itself would be kind of elongated in a way where it's kind of from the northeast down to the southwest, so we knew the North Shore would be getting in on these storms well before we really see any of the line on the South Shore. And what is interesting is, and I'm going to put this into motion just to kind of give you an idea of how these storms have been progressing over the last hour, is that the storms themselves, the southern end is really looking pretty shabby compared to the northern end, and at least there is some semblance of the northern end of this line weakening a bit. Maybe not what is approaching Bogalusa right now. Again, Bogalusa, you are under a tornado warning. You need to be in that tornado safe space immediately. This is a storm that cleared Franklinton, more over very rural parts of the parish, but now moving toward Bogalusa. We also have the storms that extend down outside of Hammond. I think Hammond, you're in the clear now because it looks like whatever rotation is left is right along the parish line, moving toward Beatico and Madisonville. So again, you want to be in that tornado safe space right now in those areas. And then as far as the rest of St. Tammany Parish, I haven't seen a whole lot of rotation with the storms that are kind of moving out of Franklinton, say St. Benedict, Goodby, moving toward more downtown Covington and up toward Waldheim. Switching over, you do find these little pockets, Blonde, outside of Folsom. There's a little pocket. You've got, again, the greens to blues are the winds moving toward our radar site. The reds are moving away. So you kind of see this could be a little broad area right here, kind of along that whole leading edge. You might get some broad rotation. And as I'd mentioned, reading what the Weather Service was saying in their discussion with the issuing of this kind of large tornado warning, is that it almost seemingly is to just include everyone. Let's see, the Weather Service has an update on that, maybe not anything.
Well, Chris,
yes.
I had a quick question for you. I know that some people, I'm following along on our chat on Facebook, and people are asking about different areas. Some asking about Poplarville, some people asking about Kenner. They want to know the intensity of this storm. Is this going to move into their area with the same intensity that we saw in Tangipahoa Parish? Because I'm following along with the power outage map from Entergy, Louisiana, and it looks like between Tangipahoa Parish and in Livingston Parish, it looks like you have about 9,500 power outages right now, and that number keeps changing and increasing as time goes by. But I have to say, you know that my family lives in Tangipahoa Parish, and so I checked in on my grandmother who lives in the Roseland area, in the Amite area. The minute I spoke with her, Chris, she said that there was no wind and that everything was fine. She can hear thunder in the distance. It had to be maybe less than 10 minutes later before she was dealing with the same power outages and before that storm moved into that area. So that's a testament to how fast this thing is moving.
They're moving very fast, and that was something we were talking about during earlier parts of our coverage, that we do sometimes get a decent amount of lead time with these storms. Not necessarily all the lead time you would wish with possible tornadoes. I do want to update, though, that tornado warning that I had said was so large over St. Tammany Parish. You've seen it kind of whittled down a little bit, but also showing up as a confirmed tornado, and it could be right here. So north of Covington, you've got what could be a confirmed tornado. Looks like it's a little more of a less populated part of St. Tammany Parish. Zooming in a little bit, though, you have wall time here kind of outside of the Abbey and St. Benedict, but certainly something that needs to be taken seriously. Wall time to Tallahassee, watching this very closely. I say that with the idea that notice how Madisonville, Mandeville now kind of removed out of that earlier warning that had covered so much of St. Tammany Parish, has now been tightened up with a indication of a confirmed tornado. I'd say, you know, and these little couplets kind of keep popping up here along the leading edge. It's what I've said, where you just get this quick little spin up, and now it looks like we might have one near St. Benedict, Covington. There could be one right in there. There has been one that has been shown around, as I said, mentioned Blonde. Just behind our banner here is Folsom. So around the wall time area right now, towards St. Benedict, Covington. This area, wall time, you want to be in that tornado safe space right now. The most centrally located part of your house on the first floor. Get away from windows. You're not going to see it. You're not going to hear it. It's just going to be upon you. As Sharice was just saying, her grandmother, 10 minutes goes from I hear thunder off in the distance, and then it is on top of you. These are very fast-moving storms, and these are all embedded. Kind of keep an eye on these two little pockets here, St. Benedict as well as wall time. And then when I switch over to reflectivity, these are two areas heavily embedded within some intense rainfall. So these are the areas. And notice the one at Covington is right on the cusp of the warned area. That's something I'd mentioned. Just because you're just outside of that polygon doesn't mean you're completely in the clear. These storms can all of a sudden change direction, or within that leading edge, which has been showing signs of weakening, but still strong enough to get some quick rotation, and all of a sudden you can possibly get a tornado. It does look like we have a new kind of along the line, in association with this line and in addition to the tornado warnings, kind of a new overall severe thunderstorm warning that has been issued for southern Tangipahoa Parish. As I said, most of the parish was getting into the clear, not quite southern Tangipahoa Parish just yet, but that does extend up toward central St. Tammany Parish. And then notice that severe thunderstorm warning does include central to eastern Washington, as well as now parts of Pearl River County. The other on top of the, and here we go, two confirmed tornadoes, and this looks like it's for the two areas that we were highlighting just a moment ago. It looks like the Weather Service wants to kind of break these up. So you've got the one here that has been over wall time. That holds together, could take it somewhere in the direction of Tallahassee to Sun. So even though it looks like maybe it hopefully kind of splits the difference and stays away from those communities, it's going to be awfully close. And as we have seen so far tonight, just over the last hour and a half now, these little cells suddenly move in a different direction. So those communities of Sun and Tallahassee, here's LA 21, you want to be watching that one very closely, as well as that storm that we have been talking about around the Goodby area, St. Benedict, the Abbey into Covington. It does look like it may be moving away and away from Waldheim. Waldheim, you're kind of in between possibly two tornadoes right now, one to your north and one to the south, right along LA 21. I can see from one of our side monitors here, we have our mobile forecast center out and about. It's in the rain. I'm not entirely certain where the car is at the moment, but I imagine we're heading up to the North Shore to kind of assess the damage. We don't put our folks in danger, so we'll get behind these storms as they progress toward the east. But it does look like Waldheim, you're kind of in between possibly two tornadoes right now. I'm staying in my tornado safe space from Waldheim. I'm in it in Bush, I'm in it in Sun, I'm in it in Tallahassee, Covington, St. Benedict. It does look like it'll continue more toward the Abita Springs area, maybe more north Mandeville along and north of I-12. So as far as Mandeville goes, it looks like it's going to be more north of 12 that this potential tornado continues along. So kind of those same two areas that I was highlighting that were all kind of within one tornado warning. The Weather Service split these up into two separate tornado warnings, so all of these communities could be notified. They're moving quickly, as I mentioned. Just at about 8 o'clock, we weren't even into the storms yet in Tangipahoa Hope Parish, and now here we are at 9:30. Much of Tangipahoa Hope Parish is already now in the clear from additional severe weather. Not quite yet the southern part of the parish, but the rest of you are starting to see the clearing and a weakening of those more intense rains. However, following those intense rains, we've started to hear the reports of how many power outages are occurring on the North Shore right now. Don't want to forget it, but moving a little bit farther to the north, doesn't really show signs kind of in this warned area of kind of central to eastern Washington Parish. Almost looks like you get a little pocket right here north of Sun where it's called Rio. It looks like maybe something right here kind of outside, but Lee's Creek could be in very close to this broad rotation. There could be a little broad rotation right here at Bogalusa, right at the state line toward Crossroads. So here's LA 10, and then that is Highway 26 in Mississippi in Pearl River County. So right here you might get some broad rotation. But for the folks in Pearl River County, the leading edge of these storms are moving in your direction right now. So the northern end of this line from central North St. Tammany through Washington Parish and then north into we're getting a little hiccup here on the imagery, but into southwestern Mississippi, that part of the line has really held steady for a while now, going back to when these storms were moving out of the Baton Rouge area. So still showing some signs, and you get these, like individual 1, 2, 3 here of possible tornadoes in St. Tammany Parish, well, 1 in Washington, 2 in St. Tammany Parish as we continue on through. I just want to widen out because sometimes we lose grasp of everything else that is going on. No indications of rotation within the storms that are now pushing through the the river parishes and then kind of moving almost into the bayou parishes here shortly. So just want to let you know that we're keeping all of those in mind a lot of times with these kind of active storms. Okay, and we just saw the little area I was just highlighting. Weather Service has issued a new tornado warning for that one. It'll include, and I just mentioned the community, and I'm forgetting it now, it's north of Sun, Rio, Lee's Creek, Henleyville in Pearl River County. That possible tornado is moving in your direction. So this is that area that I was just talking about that wasn't being covered by either of those tornado warnings.
I have a couple of questions from people that are on Facebook watching us live right now. They're asking which way is the tornado headed in Waldheim and Covington? Is it moving towards Folsom? People want to know in that area, are they in the clear?
No, Folsom, you are now in the clear. Folsom, you still have a severe thunderstorm warning because of still associated with some strong winds, but as I've said, the leading edge, so just think about where your community is. This is the leading edge of these storms. Franklinton now, it's kind of a light rain. The worst of it is now gone. This is where the worst of it, basically from Mandeville. And it's almost comical how fast these warnings keep popping up. We now have a new one that includes basically the entire lakefront from almost Madisonville. Madisonville, though, you're almost in the clear here It really is from Mandeville. Now we're talking south of I-12. Earlier we were talking more north of I-12. So this would be Mandeville kind of hovering along the lakefront toward Lacombe, and then eventually toward, not quite yet into Slidell, but it does include Slidell. So we just keep seeing these warnings issued along this entire boundary for the last now hour and almost 40 minutes. And I think that is what will continue here until this line is out of our viewing area. And as far as our Mississippi counties go, our viewing area is Pearl River and Hancock County. Once you get into Harrison County along the lakefront, that switches over to Biloxi, and then Jackson County switches over to Mobile. So once these are through Pearl River, the ones that we've been tracking north, once these are through Pearl River and Hancock County, then the focus shifts to the Biloxi television market and then out toward Mobile as this line, which, boy, has not shown any signs of weakening as they have continued from almost the Alexandria area earlier this evening and now continuing east at a good clip. Again, most of these storms embedded within the line are moving at about 30 to 40 miles an hour, so you don't really deal with them for very long. So updating where, again, those communities, folks are asking where the tornado is. So you're asking moving back toward Folsom, that would be moving west. These are moving east, so these are moving away. I don't really see anything, and I'm gonna switch over to rotation here. I apologize, we're kind of analyzing the storms in real time, so it doesn't jump out on velocities, but when we look at the rotation tracker, you've got it approaching Bogalusa right now, almost to Lee's Creek. Right outside to the west of Rio. Then you've got this one little pocket here north of Waldheim, moving in the direction of Bush and Sun. Basically, if I've said your community, you need to be in that tornado safe space. I'm highlighting all the areas where a possible tornado is and where it's potentially going. So all the communities that I've just listed here, so Lee's Creek to Bogalusa, then toward Crossroads into Pearl River County, Lee's Creek south toward Rio in Washington Parish, Sun, Bush, north of Waldheim right now, and then the storm that we had been watching that was in kind of central St. Tammany Parish. You've got the leading edge here. You see LA 435. Didn't really see a whole lot of rotation any longer here. Switch over to the velocities to see if anything kind of jumps out. Yeah, perhaps a broad area. I got to say this as well. Almost as fast as sometimes this rotation shows up, it can broaden out and it's gone, and then it tightens back up and it's back again. Do want to highlight, though, what does look to be really obvious. Chinchuba, Lewisburg Estates, my aunt and uncle in Lewisburg, you want to be in that tornado safe space. The lowest part of the livable part of your home, their home is elevated in Lewisburg, that lowest part of your first main floor, that's where you want to be right now. Lewisburg, so there's Chinchuba, what is labeled as the Mandeville lakefront, basically. That possible tornado, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about these very tightly found couplets of the greens moving toward the radar, that's back in Hammond, and the reds moving away. And when you get these little couplets like that right here, that indicates rotation. When they're tightly wound like that, that is a pretty good indication of maybe a higher likelihood of a tornado, and something that has shown up. Does look like this last pass, it has kind of weakened a bit, but that would still not do it for me to confirm anything that has sharply weakened. So right around the area, there's Lonesome Road, Monroe Street, right along or near the Mandeville lakefront, kind of Old Town Mandeville, Lewisburg Estates, Chinchuba. This is where you want to be in that centrally located part of your home right now. These are the communities that we're kind of highlighting that need to be in the tornado safe space. For folks in Madisonville, Beatico, you're kind of in the clear now. That storm is already to your east. These are all the storms that are firing up along the leading edge. So to reiterate, what looks to be pretty ominous to me is around Chinchuba, Lewisburg, Lonesome Road, Old Town Mandeville. You want to be in that tornado safe space right now. This continues along, depending upon if it moves due east. May place it eventually a little bit closer to I-12. If it stays more south, then we're talking about Fontainebleau State Park, Big Branch National Wildlife Refuge, then down toward Lacombe, depending upon exactly where along the lakefront this goes. It's also awfully close to the lakefront itself. If it does move out into the lake, could become a waterspout, and sometimes those move back onto land. So something in southern St. Tammany Parish to watch very carefully right now. Trying to find what had been the rotation with that storm around Abita. Doesn't jump out at me quite as much. You kind of get some broad areas. We switch over to the rotation indicator. Not a lot jumping out from that. Maybe along LA 435 here, kind of there's a beta, so LA 435, you got a little bit of rotation there, and then LA 36, a little bit of rotation there. You got some pockets in the Covington area as well. That storm that I was talking about, boy, that looks like it could be right along the lakefront. Again, my aunt and uncle in Lewisburg, Kleber's, Marion Dean, be in that tornado safe space right now because it looks like it is directly over you and will continue more along the Mandeville lakefront, possibly crossing or right at possibly right now near the causeway approach. So be in that tornado safe space right now. These are fast moving storms, and almost just as fast as they sometimes drop or develop, they can lift back into the storm. The storm itself can weaken, it can re-intensify again, drop again, and that has been kind of the pattern that we have seen from these storms going back to around 8 o'clock now, almost 2 hours ago, when we started tracking these storms moving into Tangier Parish. As we've just mentioned, all those communities, and you see the sheer number of tornado warnings, basically from the Mandeville lakefront almost beyond Bogalusa, north of Bogalusa. All of this is the leading edge, and all along that boundary you get the potential of rotation. Sometimes it fires up very quickly, it can then weaken and then fire back up. So all of those areas need to be mindful. Notice the one over Bogalusa that I was just talking about has expired. I'm going to go to, with this graphic kind of opened here so you can see where all the active warnings are. I'm going to open up, and of course it timed out. I'm going to open up the chat with the National Weather Service and see the latest discussion from the continuing tornado warning in St. Tammany Parish. And just to read the latest from the Weather Service, it will remain in effect for the next 15 minutes. This is radar indicating rotation. The severe thunderstorm, again, capable of producing both tornadoes and straight line winds. We've got the one that's in Covington, we've got the one in Mandeville that the Weather Service is watching closely. It's again, not kind of a, cover yourself with the information, but it really just is trying to re-emphasize the fact that it's going to be strong straight line winds or it is going to be tornadoes, either of which can produce equal damage. We had the report so far. I haven't seen any other reports of damage that have come into the National Weather Service office, of course, into our newsroom, a different source for that information. But so far, okay, my Uncle Dean is just telling me, he lives in Lewisburg. He said, we good, it just passed. So Lewisburg, all is good there. We're getting the all clear from my Uncle Dean Kleber. Hopefully everything is all right there. So again, what had been some rotation, maybe a little bit more toward the causeway approach and still moving to the east. And again, depending upon if that rotation takes it a little bit more toward the lakefront, then we're looking at the Big Branch, Fontainebleau State Park, and then down toward Lacombe. If it stays more due east, it could possibly put it a little bit closer to I-12 and then eventually towards Slidell, but depends upon Slidell either toward the lake, Oak Harbor, or maybe a little bit farther north toward the I-10, 12, 59 corridor. Pretty soon. Again, these storms are moving at about 30 to 40 miles an hour, so could be putting into those areas very, very shortly. Not showing really strong indications of the continuing rotation here, kind of in central St. Tammany Parish, moving toward Hickory, what looks to be kind of broad areas of rotation, more just the leading edge of those stronger thunderstorms, panning a little bit more to the north. Moving out of Waldheim toward Bush, Talashiq and eventually into what is called industrial, kind of outside of Picayune. Not really seeing strong indications of the rotation on any of the velocities here. And then as I kind of pan up a little bit, you do have this little bright spot just to the east of Sun here, but nothing that is really jumping out as a clear, defined rotation of a tornado on the ground, but certainly the rotation or broad rotation within the entirety of the line of very strong thunderstorms that are continuing now. You almost are all in the clear in Washington Parish. You've still got the intense rains from Angie to Bogalusa and then down towards Sun, Bush, and kind of continuing along a path, taking it almost now east of Covington. So Abita still getting it on the heavy rainfall, Mandeville. And while we've got those 4 ongoing tornado warnings, I do want to widen out and show you the line of storms that are kind of a quasi line. I'm going to put this into motion to focus on the storms that are over the river parishes now and moving toward the bayou parishes. Kind of a quasi line. It almost looks like the line itself, while everything is moving east, these are actually pushing down to the southeast. So this will kind of pass through the metro area here, probably in about 10, 15 minutes or so. And I gotta say, the computer models have done a phenomenal job with the placement and timing of these storms. And again, once you are past the leading edge, the severe risk is just about done. Can't ever say for certain 100% because of the complexity of these storms, but really, if you're gonna see severe weather, it's going to be right along that leading edge. And we really have not seen that, knock on wood, knock on whatever you got, on the south shore. That really has not been the case from the storms that are pushing across the Florida, or the river parishes right now. So we do have our 4 ongoing tornado warnings. I'm going to see the latest from the Weather Service. Parts of that severe thunderstorm warning on the North Shore are being allowed to expire because the main threat is now gone. And so what we'll likely see is parts or some of those tornado warnings on the North Shore. Some expire at 10, some expire at 10:15. There was one that we were talking about near Bogalusa that expired at 9:45, the reason that it disappeared. And as long as we don't see any additional little flare-ups of rotation along the line, then I'm hoping that within the next 10 minutes, 25 minutes or so, we will see all of these warnings expired and hopefully nothing new reissued as the line continues then by that point more into Pearl River County and Hancock County as that line progresses into then southern and coastal Mississippi. So the areas that we're watching, one kind of right here, this again not jumping out at us, but maybe a little bit of broad rotation, really not even a community to highlight here. You've got Florinville and Hickory in St. Tammany Parish. So you've got the area right here that is showing some broad rotation. And then also what we had been tracking kind of along now, the Big Branch maybe now moving toward Lacombe. I said if it took more of a path kind of along 190, it would take it more toward Big Branch and Lacombe. If it stayed a little bit more east, could have put it a little bit closer to I-12 sooner than it is right now. But it does look like this may be taking a little bit more of a path toward Big Branch and Lacombe. So areas along the Mandeville Lakefront, Lonesome Road, Lewisburg Estates that we were just talking about, you are now in the clear. Now I'm going to switch back over to the reflectivity because you still have some heavy rainfall there, but even that is starting to wind down. And I'm hopeful as we've watched this solid line of storms continue to progress that we don't see any new development. The areas of rotation are really loosely defined now as we watch them continue toward the east. And then the storms that we have in the switch over to velocities here, in the river parishes, not really showing signs of rotation. You do have kind of the, again, reds moving away from the radar site, the greens moving back toward it, so this is kind of that leading edge, and we really just not have seen that those couplets fire up, and hopefully we don't in that vicinity south of the lake. That what we have seen so far is it with regard to any new warnings issued. Does look like I don't know if this is a new warning or just an expiring of the warning that included Sun and then continues into Pearl River County, so maybe north of Picayune. Again, looks like maybe something right in through there of the potential of of some rotation or a possible tornado there. But it looks like that one would stay north of Picayune, and we will continue to monitor the other three areas, excuse me, that are highlighted in St. Tammany Parish. Again, trying to give the all clear to a lot of folks. I'd say with the exception of a little bit of ongoing heavy rain from Angie to Bogalusa, notice those areas still under the severe thunderstorm warning. The risk of any tornadoes for you now is done. So I would say the all clear could be given to Washington Parish. Again, you still got some heavy rainfall right along the state and parish line, but that is winding down. The activity in northeastern St. Tammany Parish, we're just about out of any further issues. Again, the area just to the north of Talashiq that is highlighted in a tornado warning. The indications of rotation look pretty slim, pretty loose to me right now north of Talashiq. So I would almost say you could, give the all clear to that part of St. Tammany Parish. Still a little bit longer though for southern St. Tammany along the lakefront, Lacombe to Slidell, Eden Isles, Oak Harbor. If it does continue in that direction, parts of Orleans Parish around Lake Catherine could get in on that, but otherwise it looks like that may hopefully stay more to your north in Orleans Parish, and I'm hoping that in the next few minutes or so, again, the warnings expire at either, at least what I'm trying to see now, we've got so many warnings on the graphic here. Let's see. Parts of the warning continue to be canceled in St. Tammany Parish as it moves out, as that threat moves out. And so I would venture to say if depending upon which comes first, either we hit 10 o'clock and 10:15 or the storms move out of these warned areas, then we'll see them gradually expire. As I've said, what we've been watching on the velocities here around now Lacombe, it does look like we're not really seeing the indications of that rotation nearly as well defined as it had been when this storm was over the Mandeville Lakefront, Lewisburg Estates. It looks like it's much, much weaker as it continues through Lacombe now and then continues out towards Slidell. Again, these areas are still going to get some very strong winds, heavy rainfall, but it looks like the threat of any further rotation within the storms may be winding down. I say that with the caveat that these things can still kind of pop up all of a sudden, but hopefully at least the trend over the last several minutes has been for them to maybe quiet down a bit, and I'm hoping that is what continues through the rest of this late evening now as we head toward the 10 o'clock hour. Again, okay, I guess viewers don't need to know that. We're going to reopen the newscast at 10 o'clock as I've been talking for now 2 hours. The storms that we have seen, and I'm hoping that it continues to be the case, that really these remain well below severe limits. And there was actually discussion put out by the Storm Prediction Center when they had issued the large tornado watch that included almost the entirety of our viewing, really all of our viewing area. They kind of put in their discussion that really the springboard for a lot of these severe storms was going to be more from north, say north of 10, north of the river parishes, and more into the Florida parishes, North Shore, and into Mississippi. And sure enough, that is where we have seen most of the activity. So I say that as we continue through the 10 o'clock hour, I'm hoping that this is really the last of any real severe weather threat. And hopefully as these kind of wind down, we don't see any new issues. And then anything that is from the river parishes that continue toward the bayou parishes and what we do see here in the metro area really stay below severe limits. We need the rainfall. Nice to get it at night and have it done with by early tomorrow. But I'm hoping that we don't see any new, let's see, is that a new? Yeah, a new tornado warning that is for Hancock and Pearl River, also that small part of St. Tammany just to the east of Tallahassee. So the one that you see kind of flashing here is a new warning that was issued by the National Weather Service. So we'll just continue to monitor that through the course of the evening. I do want to highlight a couple of storm reports that we have gotten before we kind of reset here for the 10 o'clock newscast. Emergency Management is reporting trees down on Commercial Street and Roseland Avenue in Roseland, and that looked to be at around, I'm trying to get a time on that. I'm going to open it here, and then so it looks like the time of that was probably when those initial severe thunderstorms, so that 8:34 it looks like, so that was when that line was first moving into Tangipahoa Parish. As far as additional, we've got some trees reported down, also in Roseland on Highway 51 and Arcola Road. Arcola was one of the areas that we were talking about. Again, right around that same time. As far as widespread, we had the power outage issued. We did have some power lines reported down as well. And I'm just trying to see as I go back through here. Doesn't look too many damage reports, at least as of yet, coming in via the National Weather Service chat group so far. Hopefully we don't see any additional as we continue throughout the rest of the night tonight. As far as the ongoing tornado warnings, again, the newest one is one that has been issued that includes Picayune as this leading edge of storms, leaves St. Tammany Parish, and eventually pushes into further from Picayune, so southern Pearl River County, and then into Hancock County. The storms that we still have in St. Tammany Parish, north and south of Tallahassee, and then that one cell that we have been watching right along the lakefront over Lacombe now, and will eventually move in the direction of Eden Isles and Slidell.
WWL Louisiana News at 10 begins with breaking news.
Well, we are tracking severe weather in Southeast Louisiana, giving you a live look at our mobile forecast center right now, driving through Tangipahoa Parish, where we did get several confirmed tornado reports within the past few hours. Actually, looking at the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office page, where they're showing reports of trees down throughout the parish, but fortunately, no structural damage at this time. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sharice Gibson. So the severe weather leaving thousands in the dark tonight. Many of them are contained in Tangipahoa Parish. Last check, more than 8,500 out in Tangipahoa Parish. The Entergy is reporting more than 8,500, not 8,000, 8,500, and in Livingston Parish about another 2,000. So combining that to more than 10,000 power outages in the areas that have been impacted by these storms. We have a reporter that is driving around the Tangipahoa Parish area as we are seeing more several reports of downed trees across the parish. But again, according to the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Sticker, they're saying that they're responding to calls with their patrol shift. They were sent some video on Highway 51, Commercial Street. Chris just talked about that a little bit earlier, just north of Roseland, where they do see some downed trees. So worst case scenario is you're seeing a lot of downed trees in the area, and there were some very heavy winds in that area and some power outages as well. That's the video that's posted on the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office page, where they are reporting some very large trees that were down. We want to go to Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin. Chris has been tracking these storms for the past couple of hours, bringing us the latest. Chris, these storms have been moving exactly exactly as you said. They're moving very quickly through these areas, and they're packing a powerful punch, especially with the winds.
Yeah, and again, regardless of whether it was straight line winds or tornadoes, which are yet to be determined by the National Weather Service, damage is damage, and that's what we've seen a lot of steadily as these storms have rolled across Tangipahoa Parish and now moving through St. Tammany. Good news is Washington Parish, all clear. The line is now well into Pearl River County, Poplarville getting in on some of the strong winds, as well as around Picayune. Now, we do have, at least as of right now, only 2 active tornado warnings. One that is outside of Talashiq, so moving away from Talashiq, and then eventually, right now, it looks like the worst of it is over the Pearl River Basin, so really no communities there, but it will be very shortly, if not already, right on the doorstep of Picayune. Switching over to the velocities, that gives us an idea of what the winds are doing. You do see kind of a small little couplet where the winds are coming away and toward the radar site, and when they're very close together, looks like Jackson Landing Road right here, we have a potential tornado that is moving into Picayune. So just to the west, here's Highway 11, here's I-59, so it is just to the west of Picayune. Picayune, you want to be in that tornado safe space immediately as that storm is moving over you. Now, once it moves beyond Picayune, it's in a little bit more of a rural area of Pearl River County. You can kind of keep an eye on it, but again, for Picayune, right now, be in that tornado safe space. As far as the storm that we have been tracking in kind of southern, the lakefront of St. Tammany Parish, there looks to be maybe a little bit of rotation right here, so moving away from Lacombe. Here's Bonfuca, E. Niles, Slidell, and while at least Slidell proper, here's town center in Slidell, not quite into the warned area because it looks like this may now be moving almost along 190 and then almost paralleling 12. So if this motion continues, it looks like it is taking it away from the St. Tammany, the lakefront itself, kind of south of Lacombe, and maybe right along 190, almost toward I-12 at the moment. So at least right now, there appears to be, with our 2 active tornado warnings, moving away from Lacombe and moving in the direction, again, if it stays along this path, kind of maybe toward 190 and 12 towards Slidell, and then eventually kind of in that 10, 12, 59 corridor. And then the one that is over Picayune, in those areas. Slidell, you've got a few minutes. Picayune, be in that tornado safe space right now. Slidell, you've got a little bit of time, but we've been watching these little broad spin-ups. They kind of quickly pop up. Sometimes they quickly weaken, and then they almost just as fast pop back up. And trying to figure out the exact path of these is sometimes very difficult. Sometimes you watch several passes of the radar and they're moving in one direction, and then all of a sudden they completely change direction. And that's what we're keeping a rough eye on right now with regard to the path of some of these potential tornadoes. So we've got 2 that we're keeping an eye on right around the Lacombe area. I'm going to switch over to the reflectivity here. So it looks like still maybe over Lacombe, kind of where 190 and LA 434 meet. So there is rotation being indicated by our radar there, as well as, I'm going to kind of pan over here, moving toward Picayune. At least the velocities look like it might be right over Picayune. Our rotation tracker algorithm is saying it's still maybe over the Pearl River Basin. Either way, in Picayune, you want to be in that tornado safe space right now. This is all, let me catch my breath here, along the leading edge of a line of thunderstorms that have been very active from central Louisiana. Really, this goes back to when it was in West Louisiana, but really started to pay attention to once it got beyond Alexandria. They stayed very active across the Florida parishes and remained strong through all of our North Shore parishes, and still doing so in our Mississippi counties. Thankfully, so far, and I'm hoping this is a trend as we go through the rest of the night tonight, is that the storms that are approaching the metro area over the over the river parishes right now do not have that severity. These are still heavy thunderstorms. You still get lightning, heavy rainfall. There is plenty of those strong straight line winds, but they don't look to be, just based on kind of the way the line of the storms on the south shore down toward the coast is aligned compared to the way they are set up on the north shore, that it doesn't appear to be the same type of setup, where more the north shore storms have been in that more classic setup for tornadic storms along the leading edge, and not quite as much the case for the storms along more, say, the southern end of this entire line of storms. So I'm saying that with hope that these, as they continue to push out of our Mississippi counties, this is really the only focus for additional severe weather as they move out, and that anything along the southern end of this line from the city and toward, say, the Bayou parishes shortly thereafter, and then toward the coast, don't have the severe risk that we have seen from these storms, from these storms through the rest of the night tonight.
Chris, I'm taking a look at power outages while you get a second to catch your breath. Washington Parish, their power outages just jumped up to about more than 1,100 outages, about 1,200. Tangible Parish also just jumped up, and we've seen the report of trees that are down within the area of Tangible Parish, 9,500, more than 9,500 outages. We're also seeing St. Helena. We know that the storm went through there, more than 400 outages, and in Livingston Parish is more than 2,100 outages. So, of course, obviously, you have to wait to confirm whether that those were caused by tornadoes that hit the area. But we do know that the winds were powerful enough to knock down trees, and Tangible Parish Sheriff is saying that they're reporting a number of trees. Actually, our reporters are out tracking the storm and trying to follow up behind the storm. The issue that they're having, the difficulty here, when you talk about the way that these storms are moving and how fast they're moving, every time they get to an area, it seems like it's already blown right through that area. Obviously, we want them to be in a safe location, and we do have Sanana McCall that we're going to check in just a second to figure out exactly where she is. But every area that they've been to so far has basically gone all the way through. So far, have not seen many pictures of any damage. I know, again, debris that's being reported, but not seeing any pictures of any structural damage. If you have those, you can send them to our number 504-529-4444. That is if you want to share any pictures in a safe way, by the way. But we are seeing more than 10,000 people without power across several parishes. Livingston mostly, and Tangible Parish, excuse me, mostly the one that's suffering the most. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I know some people over in Tangible Parish who are still suffering from some power outages, and the storm came within 5 to 10 minutes of me being on the phone to check to make sure that they were doing okay. Right now, we do know that there are no injuries reported. We have not seen any reports of any injuries, but we do know if you are, as this storm starts to make its way towards the New Orleans metro area and New Orleans, if you are concerned with the amount of rainfall that's coming our way, you are allowed to park on the neutral ground. So you can park your car there and it'll be safe until tomorrow morning. So far right now, things still looking good in our area, but Chris, you've been following this. It seems like this is moving at a pace that it's even hard for, obviously you can keep up with it because we all have the radar, but it's a difficult time for our reporters to keep up with it because it's moving so quickly.
Yeah, you know, it's a serious situation, and we try and track exactly where these potential tornadoes are going, but there almost is a little bit of levity where you're tracking this line, and almost just as fast as it moves in, a new tornado warning is issued. At one point we were tracking like 6 of them at once. It's just entirely too fast that this line is moving through, which is not a bad thing. Just get these storms out of here. And as we've been talking about, it looks like the northern end of this line, really everything that we've been dealing with on the north shore, is going to be by far the most active part of this line, which does extend down toward the river parishes. Starting to see now a bit heavier. Now, again, it doesn't mean that we won't get some intense rains here, lightning, some gusty winds, but the way way that the line on the south shore down toward the bayou parishes, what's over the river parishes right now, the way it is elongated doesn't tend to lend itself for that quick spin up. The way the storms have been elongated on the north shore does lend itself for more of that quick spin up, that quick rotation of the storms, and thus then tornado warnings are issued. The two that we still have ongoing right now, one that has been over Picayune, we've been watching this one now for a while. Almost, this has been kind of the one toward Tallahassee we've been centered over. This one has been moving in the direction of Picayune. There looks to be kind of that weak, what we call the couplet right over Picayune. I'm going to switch over to the rotation indication to see what it is showing up. And it's not nearly as well defined as it was just a little while ago. So what looks to be maybe some broad rotation not showing up quite as well. It also does lend itself to show that probably St. Tammany Parish in the Pearl River Tallahassee area kind of in the clear now, as what rotation could be, or what rotation is showing up, is now entirely in Pearl River County and possibly continuing toward maybe northern Hancock County. As far as the storm that we've been watching, this is one I was talking to via television, my aunt and uncle in Lewisburg, Mandeville, Lacombe, not really showing any signs from our rotation tracker. I'll switch back over to the velocities here to get an idea. And, you know, there may be a little sign of that right here. What definitely is showing up is that we've got some very strong winds now moving into the Slidell area. Already into parts of Slidell, but we're kind of nearing just south, say, of 12 and approaching the I-10 1259 corridor. So staying south of 12, at least the way it's set up right now, around Slidell proper as it continues moving toward 190 or along 190, kind of paralleling the highway there before it ends. So if there is any rotation, which again, our rotation tracker, it's an algorithm in the radar system, not showing anything. When we switch over to the velocities, kind of weakly showing up. And then when we switch over to the reflectivity, I'm throwing all these terms out here. Reflectivity is the rainfall. The velocities, that's looking at the winds. And then we have various programs within the radar site that allow us to analyze debris, hail, rotation within the storms. And so we've got various other products that we can look at. The two big ones, though, are reflectivity and the winds. That's the Doppler part of Doppler radar. And so what I was showing you is what was not really showing up as a very strong indication of rotation. Definitely it is the leading edge of these storms that have had some strong winds and have had already reports of strong straight line wind damage, not necessarily within the cells that are approaching from, say, Mandeville towards Slidell at the moment, but certainly along this entire line. Still some very heavy rainfall in Pearl River, St. Tammany Parish along I-59. What had been some rotation maybe showing up, looks like it's probably right over Picayune, because again, anything that's going to rotate within this leading or within these thunderstorms will be along the leading edge. That's where you're going to find the rotation, not really embedded within the rainfall. It'll be as this initial strong wind pushes on through. That's where you're going to see the leading edge. Let's see. A new tornado warning has been issued. This is for Pearl River, Louisiana, and North Slidell. Again, there's that leading edge. Let's see what the velocities show. Definitely shows kind of a little weak couplet. Hasswood, Morgan Bluff, St. Joe. There's Pearl River. To kind of center that a little bit better. You know, right here, again, not showing up bright as day as we typically see when we're analyzing these storms. But as I've said, what we have observed with this line now for the last 2 hours, 15 minutes, is that along the line, you get strong winds. You can quickly get some rotation within those. If there are any indications of kind of even broad rotation within these storms, Weather Service issues an erring on the side of caution, as they should, a tornado warning. Sometimes you hear in my voice almost an exasperation that yet another one has been issued, because these really have just been countless along this leading edge of storms as we have gone through most of this evening. Kind of interesting that we haven't seen part of this warning at least removed from St. Tammany Parish, because really the leading edge of the storm that was around Picayune is now past Picayune and out of St. Tammany Parish. Again, if you're going to see any kind of rotation, it's going to be right along that leading edge. So in St. Tammany Parish, northern Slidell, this is kind of talking about just to the north of the 10, 12, 59 corridor. So just to the north, right along 59, there is some broad rotation, or maybe tightening up a little bit. Said broad, shouldn't have said broad, kind of a tighter rotation here showing up around what is being labeled Morgan Bluff. So if that continues on, there's Stennis, Gainesville in Pearl River, as well as Napoleon and Pearl River. So pretty shortly, once this passes I-59, then you're in the Pearl River basin, and so you don't have any communities there, and then it would continue on maybe toward Highway 607 in Pearl River, in Hancock County, as that storm pushes through. Notice we have seen the one that was for more south Slidell, south of 12. That tornado warning has expired. Charisse?
All right, Chris, thanks. We're going to check back in with Chris on a second, but we talked about our reporters that are on the ground. We continue our weather impact alert with the conditions of what's there. Sananda McCall, you can't see her, but she's riding around in our mobile forecast center. Sananda, we know that it's been difficult for you engaged to kind of follow up with some of the weather because it's moving so quickly. What have you seen so far this evening?
Thanks, Charisse. Yes, as you can tell, we have been seriously trying to chase this storm. Actually, we are actually on I-12 heading towards Slidell. Again, the storm has just been passing through the areas. We initially came out here to Tangipahoa Parish, where we heard of the tornado warning in Amite. We got up there, we got closer to an area, it was Ponchatoula, where we actually started feeling some heavy winds on the highway. It got a little too windy to where we had to pull over. That's where we ended up, is a vacant commercial building in Ponchatoula. That's kind of where the rain started picking up as well. But then when we turned back around, trying to track the storm as it was heading toward Covington, we started to see more of the lightning. We weren't seeing too much of rain at that point, but we were seeing some vehicles still pulling over at grocery stores, at gas stations, just trying to wait out the storm or whatever was left of it. Again, we are heading towards Slidell right now. The rain is kind of picking up some. We are feeling the wind, but again, this storm has just been moving fast. We didn't notice, we took some back roads coming out towards this way. We haven't noticed any downed trees or anything. It seems like not too many cars are out right now. It seems like they're taking heed as to staying in a place that's safe right now. Lots of rain kind of in and out as we've been traveling from Tangipahoa Parish, and then all the way coming back, we're heading back toward the area of Orleans Parish, and it's been mostly heavy, light rain, kind of on and off, just depending on where we are. Again, we noticed the lightning probably about 20 minutes ago coming out of Tangipahoa Parish, but right now this is what the roads look like. Getting up here wasn't too crazy, except for that fact that it was extremely windy, again, to where we had to pull over. Charisse.
Sananda, you had a situation where you did have to pull over. Where exactly were you when you had to do that, and what were the conditions like during that time?
Yeah, so at that time we pulled over. It was a commercial building in Ponchatoula. It was a totally vacant building. There was a lot of water in the parking lot, I will say that. You could tell that, I'm not exactly sure where it was draining to, but there was a lot of people actually in that area who were pulling over just because of how the water was piling up. We were kind of on an off-road. I would say we were closer to Louisiana 51 is where we were driving off of. We had gotten off of the main highway at one point, and we ended up on Louisiana 21 going toward Covington. Yeah, Charisse.
All right, Sananda, thank you so much for that update. We're going to check back in with Sananda Engage in just a second. I just want to give everyone an update on the power outages because that seems to be the main issue that we're seeing here. Power lines that are down. I'm seeing some reports of some power lines down and some power outages being reported. So please be careful if you do go outside to observe any damage that may be near your home. It looks like right now those outages in Lafourche Parish, we're seeing more parishes actually report some outages, about 1,600 outages in Lafourche Parish and more than 2,100 outages in Livingston Parish. Actually, in Orleans Parish, we're seeing almost 481 outages, and I'm actually just seeing this report from Orleans Parish where we're seeing some power outages. Point Capee, 265. St. Helena Parish, 412. St. James, 846. St. John has more than 800. St. Landry, 500, and still the #1 parish right now, Tangible Parish, is dealing with the severity of those outages, more than 9,500 and 1,400 for Washington Parish as well. So everyone is feeling somewhat of the impacts of this storm as it moves through each area. Parish by parish, they're all experiencing impacts, but so far we have not heard of anyone who could be hurt. We have not heard of anyone that could experience any structural damage. So far, we're only seeing some down power lines and down trees. We want to give Chris a second just to give us an update on where those storms stand right now, because I was shocked to see that Orleans Parish has some outages already.
Yeah, we're getting the heavy rainfall. Again, not necessarily at severe limits in the city, but you do get some gusty winds, and sometimes it doesn't take much to get those power outages or street flooding. The one that we have been tracking that was kind of moving right now over the Pearl River Basin right here, this is now a radar confirmed tornado. So here is Stennis, Napoleon, Logtown, Pearlington. It is moving generally in the direction of Logtown, Pearlington at about 30 miles an hour. So this is a radar confirmed tornado, not necessarily that someone has actually observed it, but the data into the radar system is confirming a tornado. So we do just before this entire line moves out of St. Tammany Parish, still an ongoing threat for now eastern St. Tammany Parish, north of Slidell, but also including now, again, kind of the Pearl River Basin at the moment. So really in St. Tammany, not affecting anyone over the basin, but once it crosses into Mississippi, then you're going to be Logtown, here's I-10, and then south of 10. So it's going to probably cross the interstate and then could move toward Pearlington. Hopefully it will follow a trajectory that will take it offshore and into the Mississippi Sound, and then not a threat for anyone else. Let's see, we have a new tornado warning for Hancock. Let me zoom out, and yeah, it's one farther north. And a pretty obvious little couplet there, which you're looking at. This is Crane Creek, Caesar Nicase Road. Does look like right here is yet another area of rotation. This is I-59, so it is well to the east of I-59, northern Hancock County. Where this one is moving at about, let me see if I can get kind of the forward speed on it here. That one is moving at, moving east at 20 miles an hour. So that's actually a little bit slower than some of the other tornadoes that we have seen earlier tonight. Kind of updating the tornado watch as, again, the line itself is moving out. Assumption, St. James, Tangipahoa, finally you folks are in the clear now. Walthall in Mississippi and Washington Parish all removed from the tornado watch. As I said, once that leading edge has passed you, it's done. There may still be some rainfall, but it is done with regard to additional severe weather. This has been a very fast-moving line that continues to move very quickly. Again, we've seen maybe the forward progress of some of those tornadoes, the leading edge and the possible tornadoes move a little bit slower. But again, the one that has just been issued, northern Hancock County, there is that rotation within the storm itself. And then additionally, we've got the storm that is a confirmed tornado moving. We've got the one right here. So we've got kind of what, not jumping out, very obvious. We've got kind of labeled Santa Rosa there once you get into Mississippi along 607, Highway 607. Now back to a tornado warning over the Pearl River County. Looking at our rotation tracker, again, I'm going to look at the last 15 minutes of this to see where it has been going and kind of get a rough idea of the path. So then it was at the Morgan Bluff area. And right now that rotation is showing up over the Pearl River Basin, so nobody there. Continues along a path as it's been kind of moving Morgan Bluff to through Morgan Bluff, North Slidell, maybe continuing, could keep it a little bit more north of Logtown, could be very, very close to I-10. Looking at the velocities, the winds of these storms, kind of a broad area. So again, looks like right now probably very close to I-10 over the Pearl River Basin. So again, there's nobody there, but you do have a very heavily trafficked roadway on I-10 and those overpasses as you cross into Mississippi. So right now, it looks like that rotation is over the Pearl River Basin. Elsewhere along this line, we do have the three now pretty much entirely in Hancock County. You got northern Hancock County, the one in central, already to the southeast of Picayune, and then the one that is moving out of the Pearl River Basin that will continue into Hancock County. Widening out, we keep those three in mind, those are all along the leading edge of these storms. So really in Picayune, you got heavy rainfall there now. The severe risk for you has significantly dropped. Almost all of the North Shore. You've already been removed in Tangipahoa Parish and Washington Parish for the tornado watch. Almost in the clear across St. Tammany. The only exception is in Slidell now, where again, we've got a tornado warning basically from the Pearl River Basin, north, or staying north there of, and I'm sorry, I've labeled so many city named Pearlington, probably staying to the north of Pearlington as that continues. We are starting to see more of the pockets of heavy rainfall moving through the city. If these do kind of hold together here, or continue moving over the same areas, I would say based on the speed of the storms on the North Shore, there was probably a lower chance of flooding. The way these storms are projecting across the city right now, probably a greater threat for some street flooding here in the city over the next couple of hours until this entire line is gone. So I'd say the main concern south of the lake, not to say we can't see a quick little spin up for a tornado or even some strong straight line winds to cause some damage. I would say the greater risk right now for the metro area is going to be for the potential of some street flooding. We know it doesn't take much rain to get those streets to flood, and I think that may be the main concern for the metro area going forward through the night tonight. And again, this hopefully will be wrapping up in about, for much of us, within about an hour and a half or so. I think some areas will still see the rainfall, especially down toward the coast, but a lot of the severe risk already clearing out across the North Shore, and fairly soon it should be clearing our Mississippi counties. Once these again are out of Pearl River County, which they're almost entirely in eastern Pearl River County, and once these are through Hancock County in Mississippi, then that gets to be more of the Biloxi television market and then more toward Mobile. We'll still be watching the storms that will then be over the metro area moving south, but it doesn't look like those are going to have the severe threats, maybe some heavy rainfall and some minor street flooding, but I don't think they're going to have the severe threats going forward. So we'll be continuing to monitor these three areas of a tornado warned area, basically now entirely in Hancock County for the next, say, 15, 20 minutes or so. Charisse?
All right, Chris, thanks. I'm looking right now at the power outage map, and actually those power outages are more being reported in the Tangipahoa Parish area at 10,000, more than 10,000 outages right now. And we're also seeing some reports of trees down and some damage in St. Tammany Parish. I want to go to Sanana McCall, who is riding around right now. Sanana, can you tell me exactly where you are and what you're seeing right now?
Hey, Hi, Sharice. I am on I-12 going eastbound towards Slidell, and how quickly things change in the past 5 to 10 minutes. I want to show you what we're looking at right now. It is dark and it is extremely rainy right now. We can barely see through the windshield. We actually just passed through a vehicle that had to put its flashers on. A car had to make its way safely around that vehicle. A lot of people taking it easy. We are going towards where the storm is moving. We just came from Hammond Parish, where we were first alerted of a tornado warning. Over there we experienced a lot of winds. We pulled over at Ponchatoula. There it was just raining and lightning. And then we noticed that the storm was just moving quickly towards places like Covington and Slidell. When we hit Covington, the storm had already passed by that point. So we are now entering into some pretty heavy rain. We're just passing this Airport Drive exit sign. It's really getting a little crazy out here. Again, there's still people making their way, a lot of 18-wheelers, they have to do business, but right now the advice is for people to stay inside. That is what we've been hearing. We heard the National Weather Service come across our radio maybe 3 to 4 times since we've been driving, and I've gotten maybe 3 to 4 alerts also on my phone, so those were separate incidents, but a lot of people, like I said, just trying to keep it safe, staying inside. As I said earlier, people were pulling over at gas stations and grocery stores to just wait out this storm. We are heading towards Slidell, where this rain is just picking up. We're trying to take it easy over here in the left lane as well. We've been seeing some lightning. Luckily, no down trees again, no down poles, but that is currently the conditions that we are noticing, Sharice.
All right, Sananda, I know that right now we are hearing from people who are saying the winds are definitely picking up in that area. We have seen some reports of trees down and maybe a bit of damage in St. Tammany, according to the St. Tammany Parish's Facebook page. Have you guys seen anything as you're driving or anything that was noticeable to you?
As of right now, no. So we are on the highway. I'm pretty sure that maybe also through some of the back streets, some of those side streets, there will be something that's down. I know that when we were going towards Chantabaho, we did see a couple of limbs that were down, nothing major, but I believe that was due to some of the heavy winds that was happening in that area. So we haven't noticed anything yet. That's not to say, of course, it didn't happen. But as of right now on the highway, things are looking okay still.
All right, Sananda, thank you so much for that update. That's Sananda McCall giving you a look right now. A lot of you were asking about the Slidell area, and right now we're seeing a lot of you posting on our Facebook page and sending us emails saying that they're seeing heavy rain and winds in those areas. So far, not many power outages, very sparingly power outages that are in the area, but in Hammond Parish, that is where we are seeing majority of the reports of the power outages and the majority of the damage. What I have not seen so far, which is something that I'm glad to see, are any reports of any injuries. We do know that they have some power lines that are down, so please be careful as they work. I know Entergy crews will have certainly a lot to do when it comes to the cleanup in the morning, but we do see some people who are reporting that they are experiencing power outages and downed trees. That's the most that we've seen so far. And following along with this, and Chris, we know that this is in the Slidell area, moving a little bit in the New Orleans metro area right now, but it's not going to be severe or as severe as we saw at the beginning of this evening when we were following all of those tornado warnings. Do we have those warnings? Some people asking me here, are those warnings still active? And if they are active, who should be taking shelter right now? The
ones taking shelter are those folks in Hancock County. This is almost entirely out of the North Shore parishes. You see kind of the part of the St. Tammany highlighted in that. Really, it's only including the Pearl River Basin, so there's nobody there as you exit the state. So really the issue is going to be what is now crossed into Mississippi, and we'll kind of start south and move north. Still some heavy rainfall in Slidell, but as I have said, it's the leading edge of the storms where there is a severe risk. So really from 190 down towards, say, I-10, so Oak Harbor, Eden Isles, east, it's done. You've still got rainfall, yes, but the severe risk is done. Slidell itself and right around the split at 12-10-59, it's done. It's already out of your area. The leading edge, still got some heavy rainfall, but the severe threat is gone. Going a little bit farther to the north, we have an ongoing tornado warning. You've got right along here's Highway 43. Once it crosses the highway itself, then it's done. You're north of Diamond Head, then it's crossing almost into Harrison County. Going a little bit farther north from that, almost entirely into Harrison County, is kind of the leading edge of this part of the line. Still an ongoing potential tornado. And what I'll do is I'll switch over to the velocities to see what the winds are doing. Not really showing up nearly as well defined in this far northern warning, nor is it right along Highway 43. Going a little bit farther south, maybe some indications of broad rotation around Pearlington right now, but that is not jumping out to me as anything that would be strong. Now, again, that would be the indication of a tornado. These are still associated with some very strong straight line winds. You do still have some heavy rainfall. You get a lot of lightning. Remember, what was it, just Monday with the thunderstorm over Ponchatoula? It was a nothing thunderstorm, but caused a fire. Lightning can still do damage as well, taking trees down, power lines, issues on roadways. But with regard to the tornado threat, that is starting to move almost entirely out of our area, and really the only areas that are still under that threat are right along the leading edge in Hancock County. Going back to the storms over the city, you're getting the heavy rainfall now. These, thankfully, and this is really the leading edge of these storms, what are over the city right now. There's almost some very heavy rainfall. Luling out toward Thibodaux, heavy to moderate rain, heavier as you get closer to Houma, and then toward Morgan City. So this is the leading edge of the southern end of the line, let's say. We can almost classify this as two separate areas. The one that crossed the North Shore and is now moving into Mississippi. That had been the far more active part of this line. What has been from over the lake, the city, river parishes, and now toward the bayou parishes have really not been severe at all. Not to say they couldn't still be, but that has not been the trend we have seen from these storms at all. And as I've also said, this is the leading edge. So if we were going to see this line become active, Thibodaux, you're just about in the clear. Gramercy, Laplace, Luling, you're in the clear. Almost out of it in Des Allemands. The leading edge is pushing through the city right now, just about out of the risk of severe weather. North Shore, though, I'd say now, St. Tammany, you're out of the threat area. What is still being highlighted by this tornado warning has now already crossed and around the Pearlington area. And as far as the other warned areas in Hancock County, very rural spots that are being highlighted. Crane Creek in northeastern northeastern Hancock County still being highlighted, but when I switch over to the velocities, there just really isn't anything jumping out. Maybe a little pocket, Sellers, that are about to cross into Harrison County. And then let's go along that line again. Nothing really jumping out. I'm going to switch over to the rotation indication. Notice Crane Creek, nothing. The one that's a little bit kind of in the middle there of the county, nothing. The one that had been over Pearlington, nothing. So I really do think this line has wound down significantly as it has continued into now Hancock County, will continue into Harrison and then eventually into Jackson County, but thankfully the line itself has been weakening. What we have been watching over the South Shore, and we are now, if you're in the city, getting in on the heavy rainfall. Kind of curious if anybody's even on Bourbon Street right now. Doesn't look like it, as we're getting a couple of folks. We're getting the rain. This is kind of a moderate heavy rainfall here in the city. You got a few folks kind of dealing with it, but also notice this is the leading edge of what we're experiencing in the metro area, and the winds aren't really noticeably strong at all. So the wind element, the intensity of the rainfall is not nearly as heavy here south of the lake. Now this camera is shaking a bit. This camera is also 500 feet up in the air. Down at the surface, the winds are not nearly as strong as they are a little bit farther elevated, but certainly not the intensity of the storms on the South Shore that we have experienced north of the lake, and now almost entirely away from the North Shore and moving into further into Hancock County. So just over the last half hour, you see how quickly this line is moving out. Still probably another, say, 20-30 minutes for it to completely clear Hancock County once these storms are past Diamond Head, Bay St. Louis, and approaching Gulfport. That threat for any severe weather for our viewing area is then done. I think we're in the clear in Pearl River County, still ongoing in Hancock, and as far as the rainfall that we have here in the city and in the river parishes bayou, I think this is going to be just more of a moderate, heavy, much needed rain as we continue through the night. Keep in mind tomorrow morning, and let's do the 7-day forecast after all of this, because we do have some much nicer weather on the way. This upper disturbance is bringing with it not only some cooler air, but less humid air, and it'll really feel nice for the end of the week and going into the weekend. High temperatures tomorrow, we got into the mid 80s today. Tomorrow, we're going to start off in the 50s, less humid air moving in throughout the day, and a high of only 64 degrees. Let's move this computer over a little bit more. Then we're starting off the day in the 40s on Friday, sunny skies and a high of 73. Another cool morning on Saturday, but 77, briefly warming back into the lower 80s before another front, and no severe weather with the next front. The next front will just have with it maybe a 20-30% chance for some early morning showers on Monday, and then some chilly weather back. We're in the 40s and 50s to start Monday morning, 57. We stay in the 50s for a high Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day. And look at our morning lows on Tuesday and Wednesday. We're in the 30s, probably cold enough for a little patchy frost on the North Shore.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. I'm joined now on the phone by Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff Gerald Sticker. Sheriff Sticker, you're with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We've been following along on the Facebook page and getting your updates here. You have so far reportedly more than 10,000 people without power in Tangipahoa Parish. I know that there are a number of downed trees in the area. What have you seen out there?
So as of right now, I'm up in the Roseland community on Old 51, and we have trees down from up here in Roseland, down south through Amite, some into Laranja, and even down into Hammond, where there's, I guess, this band of weather came through earlier. And so we got several down trees on roadways, and main thing, as of right now, we have no reports of property damage or injury, so that's great. But I think the main message is just ask people, if you don't have any emergency or necessity to be on the roadway, please don't go out and look around. It's dark. It is. It's the power's out, so it's pretty dark out here, and it's definitely not safe. And we do have crews. Both law enforcement, we have DOTD, as well as parish government are out currently working to clear roadways.
I know that right now you said people are working to clear roadways, obviously not safe for a lot of people that are out there, but there are some people that do depend on power. Do they have any shelters open right now? Any availability for help for people?
I would, not as of right now, but I would defer that question probably parish government, but I'm not aware of any right now. I know just as I'm sitting here talking to you, an entity truck just passed by, and so we already have power crews out, and they're working to restore power and to help clear some of these down lines and get everyone back up and running. But I don't have obviously right now an ETA on when that might be.
Yeah, no, obviously I'm looking at the pictures that you all posted. Are there any areas that are more significantly damaged than others in across Tangipahoa Parish?
I think, it's pretty spread out. Up here on the north end, Roseland, Amite, down even to Laranja. But I think as far as down us, I think it's Range Road down in Hammond. There's trees down on that roadway, so it's pretty far-reaching. But up here, I think obviously there's a significant amount of trees down on this north end. But it is very rural, and so, but we're out working, and as I'm talking there, there's some crews rolling up that are checking power lines. So, everybody's working diligently to kind of, get these roadways clear and get power back on, and we'll be working throughout the night.
All right, thank you so much, Sheriff Sticker, for giving us an update on what's happening in Tangipahoa Parish. We know that area definitely faced some significant storms in the area. Thank you so much again, Sheriff.
Thank you. You have a good night.
All right, you have a good night. And we want to go now to our reporter, Sananda McCall, who again has been driving around, following along with this storm as it goes throughout our area. Sananda, it's still raining where you are. Where are you right now?
Yes, Sharice, we are still on I-12, getting even closer to Slidell. It seems like everyone has put their flashers on. The car in front of us has its flashers on. We also have our flashers on. We've got a couple of cars behind us who have their flashers on. That's how heavy the rain is getting. Again, I was hearing you speaking with Tangipahoa Parish just about how dark it is right now. As you can see, there's no lights. The only thing we can see are these flashers, and it kind of makes driving conditions even scarier because we have the rain, we have the flashing lights, people trying to take it slow, and some people who are kind of trying to speed through the rain, trying to get out of it. I hope that they're being mindful because, again, people in front of them are driving a little extra cautiously, but we are experiencing, it's just heavy rain, just clouding our windshield right now. Conditions seem to not have gotten better the closer we get to Slidell. I was going through Facebook trying to see if we could find any of the areas with the downed trees. I was seeing some things about closer to Orleans Parish and Uptown, so we're actually headed out toward that way, but I don't think I was expecting for us to be hitting some of these heavy rain spots. Just our experience prior to all of this, we were kind of just getting a little bit of rain and then missing the storm, and now it seems like we're kind of in the thick of the storm right now. So we are taking things slowly. We still have about an hour back to the station, so I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting a good deal of this, Therese.
Oh, Sananda, please be careful as you're out there. I know that there's some, these rains are not just, it's not just raining, it's also packing some really heavy winds. So be careful as you're out there on the roadways. Obviously, we see this moving a little bit closer towards Orleans Parish. We're not expecting the severity that we have seen in other areas. You heard a little bit earlier from Sheriff Gerald Sticker talking about the power outages that they're experiencing, and it's growing as I'm looking at the energy outage map right now. He says that is likely due to a lot of power lines and trees that are down. The only things that they are experiencing in Tangipahoa Parish are trees being down in the streets, and so it's blocking obviously some roadways. So the safe thing to do here, if you have nowhere to go, or if you can help it, just try to stay home just to remain safe. When it's really dark in those areas, you're talking about a really rural community. If it's dark in those areas, it's difficult to drive around, especially when you have trees that are down. Also, he said that there's no structural damage. This is the good news, no structural damage, and there are no reports of any injuries, and that is something that we want to keep that way. We can only do that if everyone stays home and stays safe. In the meantime, if you happen to have any pictures of the damage and you can safely take a picture to send to WWL Louisiana, send it to the number 504-529-4444. We're going to share your picture on air so that we can show people just the extent of the damage that we're seeing right there. But again, those storms, Chris has been talking about this for a few hours. They have been moving throughout the area, starting really in St. Helena Parish, moving on through. We had tornado warnings that, if I'm not mistaken, some of the tornado warnings are still active. And Chris, actually, no, we may not be having it. They may not be active.
They were all expired. There was one left. The couple that were set to expire at 10:45, they were allowed to expire. The one that we had been watching, kind of an extreme northeastern Hancock County, that was set to expire at 11:15, but as we kept looking at it, there really wasn't anything showing up with regard to rotation. We kind of move the computer out of here now. With regard to rotation, so that was allowed to expire. What it looks like is that the rotation that we were at one time fearing kind of along that entire boundary, now moving into Mississippi, is not really showing up. The rotation threat looks like that has wound down. So what you now see is a severe thunderstorm warning issued for basically coastal Mississippi and then extending right to the Mississippi-Alabama line. So it looks like the main threat going forward for Hancock County and then into Harrison, Jackson, will be for some strong winds, maybe some hail, though that really has not been too much of an issue, but it really looks to be more of a wind issue with regard to the threat level and not as much the spin-up tornado threat. That is where the threat of any real severe storms have been with regard to the wind and the tornadoes. Now, still get some heavy rainfall, but we have seen on the South Shore, and we still have some areas of heavy rainfall here, and down toward Thibodaux, Morgan City, has not been anything severe. So I would say while we will still get rain through the next several hours into the night, the severe risk is winding down now.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for that update. We're glad to see that we got through this without anyone being hurt or being injured anywhere in these during these storms. All right, we're going to continue to follow along with this on our website, wwltv.com. Of course, if you see, again, any pictures, you can send them to 504-529-4444. WWL Louisiana News at 5 a.m. Our morning news is going to pick up our coverage in the morning to see if, what the outcome of this looks like in the daylight. For now, we're going to end our coverage here. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here in the morning.
This has been a severe weather alert from WWL Louisiana, sponsored